Ever think about how a bunch of stone walls held off whole armies for years? Medieval castles weren't just big homes, they were battle-ready machines built to beat the odds. Their power wasn't just in how strong they were, it was in how smart they were. And it all started with one question: where to build the castle? Here's what life was really like defending a medieval castle. Hey, quick thing before we start. If you actually listen to these regularly, hit like or subscribe. I always wonder where everyone's at, so comment your city and what time it is. Weird to think some of you are having breakfast in London while I'm recording this at night here in the States. Okay, tonight it's medieval castle defense. But hold on, get comfortable first. I mean it. Fix your pillows, grab that blanket. This one's worth settling in for. Your eyes snap open to darkness. Cold stone beneath your hand, damp air in your lungs. The bell is ringing, not the gentle church bell from the village, the warning bell. You roll off your straw pallet, bare feet hitting stone so cold it nearly burns. Unlike your warm bed right now, there's no plush carpet to welcome your toes. Just flagstones worn smooth by generations of guards before you. Edgar, get up here. The voice echoes down the spiral staircase. Captain Rowan, you're late for watch. You grab your wool tunic, shaking out a spider that's made itself comfortable overnight. The fabric is rough, scratchy against your skin, nothing like your soft sheets at home. You splash water on your face from the small basin by your bed. It's ice cold and smells faintly of minerals from the castle's deep well. I'm coming, you shout, fumbling with your belt. Your stomach growls. Breakfast will have to wait. Every morning is the same rush at Castle Dunwell, late for watch again, but this morning feels different. There's an urgency to the bell that sets your heart racing. You hurry up the spiral staircase, always turning clockwise as you ascend. It's a defensive feature, you know. If enemies ever breached the lower levels, they'd be at a disadvantage climbing up. Their sword arms, usually their right, would be hindered by the central column. Meanwhile, defenders coming down would have the advantage, their right arms free to swing. You think about this every morning. Imagine, even the staircases were designed to kill people. The top of the East Tower greets you with a blast of frigid air that steals your breath. It's dawn, the sky painted in watercolour shades of pink and gold. Beautiful if you weren't so damn cold and tired. About time, growls Captain Rowan. He's a bear of a man, beard more grey than brown now, face weathered like the castle walls themselves. Take the glass, southeast approach. He shoves a bronze spyglass into your hands. It's heavy, valuable, worth more than you'd earn in 3 years of service. The metal is cold against your eye as you peer through, focusing on the southern road that winds through the valley below. And there they are, tiny figures in the distance. A lot of them. How many? Captain Rowan asks, voice suddenly quiet. You count the banners, estimate the columns of men. 200, maybe more. Or Lord Blackwell, he confirms. Been waiting for this. Runner says they've been gathering forces for weeks. The reality of what's happening hits you. They're really going to attack here, but Castle Dunwell has never fallen. Captain Rowan's laugh is dry as autumn leaves. And that's why they want it, boy. Look at where we stand. You know what he means. Castle Dunwell isn't just any fortress. It was built with defence in mind from the very first stone. Go on, he says. Tell me why we're standing here instead of down in the valley. Lord Geoffrey's always saying you're the bright one. You swallow. High ground, castle sits on the only accessible path up the northern ridge. Attackers have to march uphill for nearly a mile on a narrow path. Exhausts them before they even reach the walls. And, he prods, water, river to the west, marshland to the east. They can only approach from the south, which means we know exactly where they're coming from, Captain Rowan finishes. One direction to defend instead of four. The old lord who built this place wasn't just lucky, he was smart. You nod. You've lived at Castle Dunwell since you were 12, when Lord Geoffrey took you in after your father died in his service. 6 years of climbing these walls, learning every passageway, every defensive feature. Still, there's a difference between training for an attack and facing one. What now, you ask? Captain Rowan's eyes crinkle at the corners. Now we prepare, and you, Edgar, are about to learn why Castle Dunwell has never fallen. He clasps your shoulder. The next few weeks will be the hardest of your life, but remember, castles like this weren't built just to be big and impressive. They're machines, war machines, everything about them designed to keep people like us alive, and people like them, he nods toward the distant army, dead. The captain turns away, bellowing orders to the other guards now arriving for morning watch. Sound the alarm, send word to Lord Geoffrey, all villagers inside the walls by midday, begin inventory of food stores. The castle, sleepy just moments ago, erupts into activity. You take another look through the spyglass. Lord Blackwell's men are setting up camp beyond arrow range. They're not rushing in, they're preparing for a siege. Edgar, Captain Rowan barks, stop gawking and get moving. I need you to check the wall integrity on the south face, every inch. If there's a crack a mouse could slip through, I want to know about it. You're halfway down the stairs when he calls after you. And, Edgar, from this moment on, you're not just a castle guard, you're a defender of Dunwell. Remember that. The south wall of Castle Dunwell isn't just a wall, it's a marvel of engineering that stood for over 100 years, 20 feet thick at its base, tapering as it rises nearly 60 feet into the air. You've walked these walls countless times during your training, but today you see them with new eyes. Amazing, isn't it? You turn to find Mason Aldred beside you, running his weathered hand along the stonework. The old mason has been maintaining these walls longer than you've been alive. How does it stand so strong, you ask? Stone upon stone, yet it withstands everything. Mason grins, revealing several gaps where teeth used to be. That's the secret, lad. It's not just stone upon stone. He knocks on the wall. Hear that? Solid stone facing, yes. But inside, he gestures with his hands. Rubble fill, small stones, broken pieces, all mixed with mortar. When a battering ram hits, he punches his palm. The wall flexes, just a bit, absorbs the impact instead of cracking. You run your hand along the cool surface, feeling the history beneath your fingers. And this slope at the bottom? The talus. Mason nods approvingly, makes the wall thicker where it needs to be strongest, forces any impact upward instead of straight in, also makes siege ladders a nightmare to position. He chuckles. Ever try to stand a ladder against a sloped wall, slides right off, or sets at such an angle that any poor soul climbing it is practically lying on their back? You've never thought about it that way. A simple slope, yet so effective. Look there, Mason points to where the outer curtain wall meets an inner wall. Concentric design. Even if they breach the outer wall, they're trapped between walls with arrows raining down from both sides. Killing field, we call it. I've heard that before, you admit. Caught between a rock and a hard place. Literally, Mason laughs, slapping his thigh. I tell you, Edgar, every inch of this castle was built to make attackers miserable and keep us safe. As you continue your inspection, you notice small pebbles embedded in sections of mortar near the base of the wall. What are these for, you ask? Mason's eyes twinkle. Ah, clever that. Early warning system. If enemies try tunneling under the walls, those pebbles shift and make noise. Guards hear it, raise the alarm. No batteries required, just physics. You shake your head in wonder. It's like the whole castle is alive, thinking. That's exactly right, Mason agrees. A living, breathing defense machine. Now come on, we've got work to do before those bastards down there figure out what they're up against. You spend the morning checking every inch of the southern wall, marking tiny cracks for repair, ensuring drainage holes are clear. By midday, the sun beats down mercilessly. Your tunic sticks to your back with sweat. Villagers stream through the main gate below, bringing livestock, food stores, whatever they can carry. The castle population will swell to 3 times its normal size during the siege. From atop the wall, you can see Lord Blackwell's men constructing siege engines, wooden frames taking shape, teams of oxen hauling massive logs that can only be battering rams. Captain Rowan appears beside you, squinting at the activity below. Ambitious, he grunts. They think they'll break through in a week or 2. How long do you think it will take? You ask. The captain's weathered face splits in a grin. 6 months, if they're stubborn. Most likely they'll give up in 3. Meanwhile, our food stores are good for 8 months, water supply is secure, and, he points to the sky, winter's coming. Nothing like sleeping in mud while snow falls to dampen an army's spirits. He claps you on the shoulder. Come on, Lord Geoffrey wants to see all defenders in the Great Hall. Time you learned about the next line of defence. As you follow Captain Rowan down from the wall, you can't help but think about the enemy soldiers below. They have no idea what they're really up against. Stone isn't just stone when it's part of a castle. It's a weapon, a shield, and a home all at once, and you're about to learn just how deadly a home can be. The Great Hall buzzes with activity as you enter behind Captain Rowan, usually a place for feasts and councils. Today it's transformed into a war room. Lord Geoffrey stands at a massive oak table in the centre, surrounded by his most trusted knights and advisors. At 55, he remains imposing, tall and straight-backed, though his beard has gone silver. Maps and parchments cover the table. Carved wooden models represent Castle Dunwell and the surrounding land. Tiny figures mark Lord Blackwell's forces. Ah, Rowan, Lord Geoffrey nods as you approach. His eyes flick to you. And young Edgar, good, I wanted him here. You stand straighter, surprised to be noticed. My lord, Captain Rowan bows slightly. The south wall is secure. Repairs are underway for minor weaknesses. Excellent. Lord Geoffrey turns to the assembled defenders. As you all know, Lord Blackwell has finally made his move. He wants Dunwell, has for years, controls the river trade, commands the northern pass, and has never fallen. He smiles thinly, and will not fall now. A murmur of agreement ripples through the room. Captain Rowan has inspected our walls. Master Fulton has confirmed our food stores are sufficient for 8 months. The wells are full, and the cisterns collecting rainwater are prepared for additional storage. He places his palms flat on the table, leaning forward. Now, we discuss the gatehouse. Lord Geoffrey beckons you closer. Edgar, you've been training under Master Corrin in the gatehouse, yes? Your throat goes dry. Yes, my lord. 3 days each week for the past year. Tell everyone what you've learned. All eyes turn to you. You swallow hard, then straighten your shoulders. The gatehouse is both our weakest point and our strongest defence, you begin. It extends 40 feet beyond the main wall, creating a gauntlet any attacker must pass through. First, they face the outer drawbridge and portcullis. If they somehow breach that, they enter the killing corridor. You gesture with your hands, warming to your subject. 20 feet long, with murder holes above for dropping rocks or pouring boiling water. Arrow loops on both sides allow our archers to fire from protected positions. Then comes the second portcullis, backed by iron-reinforced oak doors, 3 inches thick. Lord Geoffrey nods approvingly. And if they somehow breach all of that, they'd find themselves in the small courtyard between the outer and inner walls, surrounded on three sides by archers on the wall walks with nowhere to hide. Just so, Lord Geoffrey agrees. The gatehouse is a trap, not an entrance, but we must ensure it's properly prepared. He turns to a thin man with a hawkish face. Master Corrin, what do you need? The gatehouse master steps forward. We've stockpiled rocks for the murder holes, my lord. I recommend we prepare cauldrons for heating water as well. Sand, too. Sand? Someone asks. Gets under armour, Master Corrin explains. Causes terrible burns and men can't shake it out easily. More effective than oil, which is too valuable to waste anyway. See to it, Lord Geoffrey commands. What of the portcullises? Both mechanisms have been greased and tested. They drop in under 2 seconds. I've assigned 4 men to each, working in shifts around the clock once the siege begins. The discussion continues, covering every aspect of castle defence. You listen, fascinated, as centuries of defensive wisdom unfold before you. This isn't just a building, it's a complex machine with every component designed for one purpose: survival. As the council concludes, Lord Geoffrey catches your eye. Edgar, a moment. You approach nervously as the others file out. Captain Rowan speaks highly of your attention to detail, he says, and Master Corrin tells me you've taken to gatehouse operations better than most. Thank you, my lord. I have a special assignment for you. From tomorrow, you'll divide your time between wall duty and training with Master Willem. Your heart skips. Master Willem, the Keeper of Secrets? Lord Geoffrey's eyes crinkle slightly at your reaction. Yes, the secret passages. Should Dunwell ever be in danger of falling, which it won't be, certain knowledge must be preserved. You'll be one of the few entrusted with our escape routes. You bow, deeply honoured and slightly terrified. I won't disappoint you, my lord. See that you don't. He turns back to his maps. Get some rest, Edgar. Tomorrow we truly begin to teach Lord Blackwell why Dunwell has never fallen. As you leave the Great Hall, the reality of the situation settles over you. This isn't just an attack, it's a test of everything this castle was built for, and somehow you've become an important part of its defence. The warning bell rings again as dusk approaches. You rush to the eastern wall, joining a crowd of defenders watching as Lord Blackwell's army completes their encampment. Hundreds of tents spread across the valley floor, campfires beginning to dot the landscape like fallen stars. Quite the sight, isn't it? You turn to find Archer Ellie beside you. At 25, she's the finest shot in Dunwell, capable of hitting targets other archers wouldn't even attempt. Have you ever seen an army that big? You ask. Once, she nods. 5 years ago, they gave up after 4 months, tails between their legs. She grins. Sieges aren't won by numbers, Edgar. They're won by patience and preparation, and we've been preparing for centuries. You look out at the enemy camp again. From up here, they seem small, insignificant against the landscape, but tomorrow they'll begin moving their siege engines into place. The real test of Dunwell will begin. Get some sleep, Ellie advises. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. As you descend to your quarters, the castle settling into an uneasy vigilance around you, you can't help but feel a strange sense of purpose. All your life you've heard stories about great sieges, about castles that stood against impossible odds. Now you're living inside one of those stories. Your hand trails along the cool stone wall as you walk, 20 feet thick, built to last forever. You hope it lives up to its reputation. Sleep doesn't come easy. The stone floor beneath your pallet seems harder than usual. Every time you close your eyes, you see the army camped in the valley. Hundreds of men all wanting to kill you, to take Castle Dunwell. Dawn arrives with a persistent kick to your ribs. Up, Edgar, now. You open your eyes to find Master Willem looming over you. He's a shadow of a man, thin and wiry, with a face like crumpled parchment and eyes that miss nothing, the castle's keeper of secrets. My lord said tomorrow, you mumble, rubbing sleep from your eyes. It is tomorrow, Willem snaps, and we start before the sun. Castle's secrets are best learned in darkness. You throw on yesterday's tunic and follow him through the lower corridors of Dunwell. The castle is already stirring, servants preparing breakfast, guards changing watch. Outside, Lord Blackwell's men will be preparing their first assaults, but in here, life continues with tense normalcy. Willem stops before a section of wall that looks identical to every other. What do you see? He asks. You study the stones carefully. Nothing unusual. Good, that's the point. His fingers press a seemingly random pattern of stones. Something clicks deep in the wall and a section swings inward, revealing a dark passage. Sweet Mary, you whisper. The first rule of castle secrets, Willem says, is that they remain secret. Lord Geoffrey has entrusted you with knowledge that could mean life or death for everyone here. Betray that trust, and I'll personally ensure your remaining days are few and unpleasant. You swallow hard. I understand. He hands you a small oil lamp. Follow close. Touch nothing unless I tell you. The passage is narrow, shoulders brushing both walls, and winds downward in a gentle spiral. The air grows cooler, damper. Somewhere, water drips with maddening regularity. Castle Dunwell has 17 secret passages, Willem explains as you descend. Most connect different sections of the castle, ways to move troops quickly without exposing them. Some are for storage or access to water sources. 3 are escape routes. Like this one, you ask? Willem's laugh is dry. This? No. This is something else entirely. The passage levels out, then opens into a small circular room with a low ceiling. More passages branch off in different directions like the spokes of a wheel. Willem takes your lamp and uses it to light wall sconces. As light floods the chamber, you gasp. The walls are covered with detailed drawings, maps of Castle Dunwell showing every passage, every room, every defensive feature. Notes in faded ink mark vulnerable points, recommended garrison numbers, estimated supply needs for different sizes of attacking forces. The War Room, Willem says simply, created by the First Lord of Dunwell and maintained by every keeper of secrets since. What you see here is 300 years of defensive wisdom. You turn slowly, taking it all in. It's incredible. It's survival. Willem points to a detailed drawing of the castle's towers. Tell me what you see. You study the image. The towers, they're round. And why is that important? You think back to your training. Square towers have blind spots at the corners where attackers can work unseen. Round towers eliminate those. Good. What else? You look closer. They're spaced evenly along the walls. How far apart? You measure with your fingers against the scale. About 200 feet? 180 to be precise. Do you know why? You rack your brain but come up empty. No, sir. The effective range of a longbow, Willem says, tapping the drawing. No matter where attackers approach along the wall, they're always within range of at least 2 towers, overlapping fields of fire, nowhere to hide. He moves to another drawing, this one showing a tower's interior. What about this? What do you see? The drawing shows arrow loops, narrow slits in the tower walls. Arrow loops for defenders to fire through. Look closer. You peer at the detailed drawing. The slits are wider on the inside, narrowing to just a few inches on the exterior. They're splayed inward. Exactly, Willem nods approvingly, gives archers a wide field of vision and fire while presenting the smallest possible target to enemies outside. A man 20 feet away can't see if there's an archer ready to fire or not. Meanwhile, the archer can see everything. He leads you to another drawing, this one showing the wall walk atop the curtain walls. Tell me about these. Battlements, you reply confidently. The up and down pattern along the top of the wall. Proper terms, Willem corrects. The raised sections are merlons, which protect defenders. The gaps are embrasures, which allow them to shoot arrows or throw things down on attackers. You trace the pattern with your finger, so defenders stay behind the merlon, then step forward to the embrasure when attacking. Exactly. Medieval social distancing. Willem's mouth twitches in what might be a smile. Stay behind the stone, shoot through the gaps, don't die. He shows you drawing after drawing, explaining defensive features you've walked past 100 times without truly understanding. The wall walk wide enough for 2 armoured men to pass without risk of falling. The different weapons platforms, positions for longbowmen to fire at distant targets, stations for crossbowmen to handle closer threats. "What's this?" you ask, pointing to a drawing of a large crossbow-like device mounted on a tower. "Springald," Willem says. "Huge dart launcher, powerful enough to punch through shields and skewer multiple men at once. We have those. You've never seen such weapons on Dunwell's towers. Hidden until needed. Lord Geoffrey doesn't advertise all our capabilities." Willem rolls his shoulders. Nothing brings enemies together quite like being pinned by the same giant dart. You laugh despite yourself. Willem continues the lesson, showing you how Dunwell's every feature serves a defensive purpose. Even the spiral staircases turn clockwise as they ascend. A detail you noticed yesterday gives defenders coming down the advantage, you say. Their right arms swing freely, while attackers coming up have their sword arms hindered by the central column. Willem raises an eyebrow. You're not entirely hopeless. From the war room, Willem leads you through another passage. This one climbs steadily upward, occasionally branching into side tunnels that Willem explains connect to different parts of the castle. If the lower levels are breached, he says, defenders can retreat upward while still being able to move between sections without exposing themselves. The passage eventually emerges behind a tapestry in a small room in the eastern tower. Dawn light filters through the arrow loops, casting thin beams across the stone floor. "This is where we begin your real training," Willem says. "Today you learn how towers defend Castle Dunwell." Outside, the warning bell sounds. You move to the arrow loop, peering out over the valley. Lord Blackwell's men are on the move, dragging the wooden frames of siege towers toward the castle. "Perfect timing," Willem says, joining you at the narrow window. "They're starting with siege towers, ambitious but predictable. Will they work?" you ask, watching the massive structures inch closer. Willem scoffs. "Against some castles, perhaps. Not Dunwell." He points to the towers positioned along the walls. "Watch and learn how castle towers were designed as the ultimate defensive weapon." Throughout the morning, Willem takes you on a tour of Dunwell's towers. Unlike the simple guard towers you're familiar with, each is a sophisticated battle station. The largest, the Tour de Constance on the southeast corner, features a special chamber with a massive fire pit. "Signal fire," Willem explains. "Visible from 20 miles away. When lit, nearby Allied castles know we're under attack." You look out from the tower's heights, understanding dawning. It's not just about defending this castle, is it? It's a network. Now you're thinking properly, Willem nods. One castle is a fortress. Multiple castles supporting each other is a defensive system. From here, we can alert 3 other strongholds within hours. He shows you the platforms built inside each tower, fighting positions arranged on multiple levels, each with arrow loops covering different approaches. The interior is designed so defenders can quickly move up or down, repositioning as needed. Look at this. Willem points to an arrow loop that appears different from the others. You peer through to see it offers a view directly along the wall. This one doesn't face outward, you observe. Enfilade position, Willem explains, allows archers to fire along the length of the wall. If attackers manage to reach the wall with scaling ladders, they'll be shot from both in front and from the side. Try dodging arrows from multiple directions while climbing a ladder. Like a very unfair game, you mutter. Exactly. Willem's eyes gleam. That's the whole point of castle defence. Make it unfair. Stack every advantage in our favour. By midday, you've visited 3 of Dunwell's major towers. Your legs ache from countless stairs and your head swims with new information. From the western tower, you watch as Lord Blackwell's men position their first siege tower within range of the walls. It's an impressive structure, nearly 50 feet tall, covered in raw hides to protect against fire arrows. They're getting ready for their first assault, you say. Willem merely nods. Captain Rowan will handle the initial defence. We have other matters to attend to. He leads you to the northern tower, the tallest in Dunwell. Unlike the others, this one contains a strange mechanism at its top, a large drum with a handle, attached to thick chains that disappear into the floor. What's this, you ask? Another secret, Willem says, one that's kept Dunwell safe through 12 sieges. Before he can explain, the warning horn sounds from the south wall. 3 sharp blasts. Attack imminent. Come, Willem says. Time to see theory put into practice. You rush together to the south wall, emerging onto the wall walk just as Lord Blackwell's forces begin their advance. Hundreds of men push the massive siege tower slowly toward the wall, while others provide covering fire with longbows. Arrows whistle overhead, most falling short or clattering harmlessly against the stone. Captain Rowan stands calmly directing the defence. Archers hold their positions, waiting for the enemy to enter effective range. Hold, he commands. Let them come closer. The massive siege tower inches forward, pushed by sweating men as arrows continue to fly overhead. Now! Rowan bellows when the enemy reaches his predetermined mark. Dunwell's archers rise as one from behind the merlons, loosing a devastating volley into the exposed men pushing the siege tower. Dozens fall, but others quickly take their places, pushing the tower ever closer to the wall. Second rank ready, Rowan shouts. Fire! Another volley darkens the sky. More attackers fall. Still, the tower advances. They're persistent, you mutter. Watch, Willem says calmly. As the tower comes within 50 yards of the wall, a new sound reaches your ears, the cranking of mechanisms from the nearest tower. You watch, fascinated, as a massive springald is wheeled into position on the tower platform. 3 men operate the weapon, cranking it to full tension, then loading a massive iron-tipped dart into its track. Fire, comes the command. The springald releases with a deep twang. The dart flies true, punching through the hides covering the siege tower and embedding itself deep in the wooden frame. Men scream as the massive projectile tears through the structure. More springalds appear along the wall walk. More darts fly. The siege tower shudders under the impacts, but still it comes. Archers, fire at will, Captain Rowan commands. A continuous stream of arrows pours from Dunwell's walls as the siege tower finally reaches its destination. It thumps against the stone wall, its gangplank poised to drop onto the wall walk. "Ready!" Rowan calls to the defenders gathered around him, swords and axes in hand. The gangplank crashes down. For a moment, nothing happens. Then armoured men begin pouring from the siege tower onto Dunwell's wall walk. The clash of steel fills the air as defenders meet attackers head-on. You draw your sword, ready to join the fray, but Willem holds you back. "Wait," he says. "Watch how a castle defends itself. From your position, you see what the attackers don't. Men emerging from the tower to the south, armed with hooks on long poles. While the battle rages on the wall walk, these men reach out to the siege tower, secure their hooks to its frame, and begin to pull. The tower, balanced precariously against the wall, begins to shift. Just inches at first, then more. Attackers still climbing its interior suddenly cry out as they feel the structure move. "Pull!" the tower commander shouts. With a groan of timber, the massive siege tower tilts away from the wall. Men inside scream as they tumble. The structure teeters for one breathless moment, then crashes to the ground in a splintering of wood and screams. On the wall walk, the attackers already engaged suddenly realize they're cut off. The fight is brief and brutal, and that, Willem says as the last attacker falls, is why siege towers rarely work against a properly defended castle. You stare at the wreckage below, where survivors crawl from the shattered remains of the tower. They'll try again. Of course they will, Willem agrees, but each attempt costs them men, materials, and morale. Meanwhile, we sit comfortable behind walls designed to outlast them. Captain Rowan orders the dead attackers thrown from the wall to join the wreckage below, a gruesome message to Lord Blackwell. "Come," Willem tugs at your sleeve. "We have more to learn before they try their next approach." As you follow him back into the castle, you glance over your shoulder at the battlefield. The castle has defended itself perfectly, just as it was designed to do. Men built these walls, but in some strange way, the walls now protect the men. Willem leads you to the eastern section of the castle, to a part you've rarely visited. A narrow staircase descends into darkness. "Where are we going now?" you ask. "To see Dunwell's most important defence," Willem replies cryptically, "the one that makes all others possible." You follow him down the winding stairs, deeper than you've ever been in the castle before. The air grows cool and damp. Somewhere ahead, you hear the soft splash of water. The castle's secrets are only beginning to reveal themselves to you, and somewhere above, Lord Blackwell is already planning his next assault. But Dunwell has stood for 300 years. Its stones have seen dozens of would-be conquerors come and go, and now you're beginning to understand why. The stairs seem endless, spiralling down into the bedrock beneath Dunwell. The walls here aren't finished stone like above, but rough-hewn rock. Your lamp casts dancing shadows that make the passage feel alive. "Watch your step," Willem warns. It gets slippery. The sound of water grows louder. The air feels different too. cooler, with a mineral scent that reminds you of caves. How much further, you ask, voice echoing strangely. Impatient, Willem chuckles. A good defender must have patience. Sieges are won by those who wait the longest. Finally, the staircase ends at a heavy wooden door reinforced with iron bands. Willem produces a large key from his tunic and unlocks it. The door swings open with a groan that suggests it's rarely used. "Welcome," he says, "to the heart of Dunwell." You step through into a vast circular chamber. Your lamp barely illuminates the nearest wall, but you hear the distinct splash of water. Willem moves to wall sconces, lighting them one by one until the room glows with warm light. In the center of the chamber sits a stone well, its mouth 10 feet across, descending into darkness. Stone pillars support a vaulted ceiling far overhead. The chamber must be 60 feet across at least. "The Great Well," Willem announces proudly, 115 feet deep, reaching the underwater river that flows beneath Dunwell. Even in the worst drought, it has never run dry. You approach the well, peering into its depths. It's enormous. And just one part of our water system. Look there. Willem points to a series of channels cut into the floor, leading to a large stone basin against the far wall. Rainwater from the roofs and courtyards is channeled here as backup, and there, he indicates several large wooden barrels. Emergency stores, kept fresh by rotating the supply monthly. You've never given much thought to where castle water comes from. Like air, it was simply always there when needed. Most sieges fail because the attackers run out of water, Willem explains, or worse, drink from contaminated sources and fall ill. Meanwhile, we have clean water for hundreds of people for as long as necessary. He walks the perimeter of the chamber, showing you the mechanisms that drive the Great Well, pulleys, counterweights and winches that make drawing water from such depths manageable. "The first thing they built," Willem says, "was this well. Before a single wall went up, before the foundations were laid, they dug down to find water. Nothing ruins your day quite like spending 5 years building impenetrable walls, then realizing nobody thought about drinking water." You laugh at his dry delivery. Seems obvious when you say it. The most important things often seem obvious. Afterward, Willem runs his hand along the stone rim of the well. This is why Dunwell has never fallen. Stone walls can be breached, gatehouses can be broken, but without water, no defence lasts longer than 3 days. He gestures for you to follow him to another door on the far side of the chamber. Now for the second most important defence. The next room is even larger than the well chamber, stretching far beyond your lamp's light. As Willem lights the sconces, you see row upon row of wooden shelves, barrels and sacks. The Undercroft, Willem says, Dunwell's food storage. The scale is staggering. Barrels of salted fish and meat line one wall. Sacks of grain, wheat, barley, oats, fill shelves reaching to the ceiling. Clay jars sealed with wax contain dried fruits and nuts. Wheels of hard cheese stack in neat columns. "How much is here?" you ask, overwhelmed. "Enough to feed the regular castle population for 1 year, Willem answers. "With the village refugees, about 8 months. Lord Geoffrey maintains the strictest stockpiling regimen in the region." You run your hand along a barrel of dried apples. "Is this why taxes are so high?" Willem raises an eyebrow. "Would you rather pay less tax and starve when Lord Blackwell comes calling?" Put that way, the answer seems obvious. Medieval meal prep wasn't about pretty pictures of food, Willem says, gesturing around the massive storeroom. It was about not starving while arrows fly overhead. He leads you between the towering shelves, explaining the preservation methods that keep food edible for months or even years. Salt for meat and fish. Drying for fruits and herbs. Hard cheeses that actually improve with age. Grains stored in sealed containers to keep out rats and weevils. And beer, he says, pointing to huge wooden casks at the far end of the room. Safer than water sometimes, and good for morale during long sieges. Beer has been keeping medieval defenders both hydrated and slightly more optimistic about being surrounded by enemies since, at least 1066. You laugh. Willem's dry humour is growing on you. But this is just the main storage, he continues, leading you to yet another door. Each tower also maintains its own emergency supply, enough for the defenders assigned there to last 2 weeks if cut off from the main castle. The next door opens to a smaller room filled with weapons and armour. Racks of spears line the walls, barrels full of arrows, crossbows hanging from hooks. The armoury, Willem explains unnecessarily, though the main one is above ground near the barracks. This is the reserve supply in case the upper levels are lost. You notice buckets of pitch and oil in one corner. Fire weapons? Last resort, Willem nods. Dangerous to use, but effective when needed. As you explore the underground chambers, Willem explains how every aspect of the castle's design accounts for siege survival. The kitchens positioned to vent smoke through multiple chimneys, preventing enemies from targeting food preparation areas. The latrines designed to empty far from water sources. The rainwater collection systems built into the very walls. Castle design isn't just about keeping enemies out, Willem says. It's about keeping defenders alive long enough for the enemies to give up and go home. A bell sounds somewhere above, a different tone from the warning bell. Willem glances up. Midday meal. We should return to the surface. You've training with Captain Rowan this afternoon. As you climb back up the winding stairs, legs protesting after so much walking, you ask, how long do you think Lord Blackwell will stay? Willem considers this. Depends how many men he loses, how much food he's brought, whether disease breaks out in his camp, but most sieges fail within 3 months. The besiegers run out of supplies, patience, or men willing to die for someone else's ambition. You emerge from the stairway into the main keep, blinking in the sudden brightness. The great hall buzzes with activity as people gather for the midday meal. The space, normally vast and echoing, now feels crowded with villagers from the surrounding lands who've sought refuge inside Dunwell's walls. Castle population triples during a siege, Willem observes. Space becomes precious. Great halls that normally host feasts become sleeping areas. Privacy vanishes. You spot families huddled in corners, children playing between the tables, old men and women sitting on benches along the walls. These are the people you're defending. Farmers, blacksmiths, tanners, coopers, ordinary folk whose lives depend on these stone walls. Edgar. You turn to see Ellie the archer, waving from a nearby table. She sits with several other members of the castle guard and has saved you a space. Go, Willem says. Eat, rest if you can. Captain Rowan will find you when he's ready. You join Ellie and the others, gratefully accepting a wooden bowl of thick stew and a chunk of dark bread. How was your morning with the castle ghost? Ellie asks, using Willem's nickname among the guards. Educational, you reply. Did you see the attack on the south wall? She nods, expression darkening. From the east tower, they lost at least 30 men. Won't be their last attempt, though. What do you think they'll try next? Battering ram, probably, says Garrick, a burly guard with a red beard. They'll want to test our gate. Good luck with that, snorts Thomas, a lean, dark-haired veteran of 2 previous sieges. That gatehouse is a death trap. You think of the killing corridor Master Corrin described with its murder holes and double portcullises. They'd be mad to try it. Mad or desperate, Ellie shrugs. Lord Blackwell needs a quick victory. Winter's coming and he can't keep his army in the field indefinitely. The longer we hold, the better our chances. You eat in silence for a moment, contemplating this. Castle warfare isn't about glorious battles like in the songs. It's about endurance, patience, outlasting your enemy. What's it like, you ask Thomas, when a siege goes on for months? He chews thoughtfully before answering. Boring, mostly, punctuated by moments of absolute terror when they attack. The worst part is the waiting, never knowing when the next assault will come. And the smell, Garrick adds. Hundreds of people packed together. Limited washing water. You get used to it, but then there's the disease, Thomas continues. Close quarters, shared food and water. One person gets sick, soon 50 are coughing. You're painting such a lovely picture for the lad, Ellie interrupts, rolling her eyes. She turns to you. It's not all gloom. People come together, share stories, play games. The community becomes stronger. True enough, Thomas concedes. Last siege, I learned to play chess. Got quite good, actually. He means he can now recognise the pieces. Garrick laughs, earning a crust of bread thrown at his head. The easy camaraderie among the veteran defenders helps settle your nerves. These people have lived through sieges before. Dunwell still stands. The system works. After the meal, Captain Rowan finds you as promised. Time to inspect our moat defences, he says without preamble. Willem tells me you've seen the inner workings, now for the outer. You follow him through the busy courtyard, dodging children playing some complicated game with sticks and a leather ball. Chickens scatter before your path. A blacksmith hammers rhythmically at his forge, preparing arrowheads for the castle's defenders. Life goes on, even during siege, Rowan observes, following your gaze. That's the point of a castle. To create a space where normal life can continue despite what happens outside the walls. You reach the northwest tower, which offers a clear view of the castle's northern approach. Unlike the southern side where Lord Blackwell's forces are camped, this area appears peaceful. Green fields stretch to the forest's edge, the river winding like a silver ribbon to the west. Looks peaceful, you comment. For now, Rowan agrees, but Blackwell isn't stupid. He'll probe for weaknesses on all sides eventually. He points to the broad ditch that surrounds Dunwell on all sides, the moat. Unlike some castles, Dunwell's moat isn't filled with water except on the western side where the river feeds it. Dry moat, Rowan explains, more effective than you might think. 40 feet wide, 15 feet deep. Sides too steep to climb easily, especially in armour or carrying weapons. You study the impressive earthwork. Why not fill it with water all the way around? Or maintenance? Rowan shrugs. Stagnant water breeds disease, requires constant management. A dry moat needs little upkeep and serves nearly the same purpose, forcing attackers to either fill it in or build bridges while we shoot at them. He directs your attention to the bottom of the moat, where you notice something glinting in the sunlight. Caltrops, Rowan says, iron spikes arranged so that however they land, one point always faces upward. Scatter them in the moat, and anyone jumping down finds a nasty surprise. Ouch, you wince. Precisely the idea. Some castles use wooden stakes, others release animals, even snakes in warmer regions. Nothing says go away quite like a ditch full of snakes. You laugh at the image. The moat's primary purpose isn't just to hinder direct assault, Rowan continues. It prevents tunneling under the walls, a technique called sapping. Trying to dig under a moat means hitting the water table, which floods the tunnel. You nod, remembering the rubble and pebbles Mason had pointed out in the wall foundations, another anti-tunneling measure. Rowan leads you around the wall, pointing out other defensive features, the drawbridge mechanism, chains and counterweights hidden inside the gatehouse that allow it to be raised in seconds, the drainage system that prevents rainwater from weakening the foundations. Even the carefully maintained clear space beyond the moat, no trees or structures that could provide cover for approaching enemies. 300 years of refinement, Rowan says proudly. Every Lord of Dunwell has added something, improved some aspect of defence. As you complete your circuit of the walls, you notice activity near the south gate. Workers roll barrels of sand and stack firewood near the murder holes. Preparing for the next attack? You ask. Rowan nods. Battering ram, most likely. They're building it beyond arrow range, but our scouts can see it taking shape. Massive tree trunk with a metal cap will be mounted on wheels with a wooden shed built over it to protect the men pushing it. Will they breach the gate? You try to keep the worry from your voice. Not a chance, Rowan grins. That's why we have murder holes. Nothing ruins a nice battering ram attack quite like having boulders dropped on your head. You recall the design of the gatehouse, its projecting structure creating a killing zone for anyone approaching the main gate. Rowan's expression grows more serious. That said, every attack is dangerous. Men will die tomorrow, on both sides. Your job is to make sure more of them die than us. He clasps your shoulder. Get some rest. Tomorrow will test everything you've learned. As the captain walks away, you remain on the wall, watching Lord Blackwell's camp in the distance. Smoke rises from hundreds of cooking fires. Men scurry about like ants, preparing weapons, moving supplies, building engines of war. For a moment, you try to imagine their perspective, staring up at Dunwell's towering walls and seemingly impregnable towers. How hopeless it must seem to those men, ordered to attack a fortress designed specifically to kill them. Yet they'll try. Tomorrow they'll march towards certain death because their lord commands it. A cold breeze ruffles your hair. The sun begins its descent toward the western horizon, casting long shadows across the valley. From this height, the approaching army looks small, insignificant against the landscape. But tomorrow there'll be real men with real weapons, trying their best to kill you and everyone you know. You turn away from the view, heading back to your quarters to rest before tomorrow's battle. As you descend the spiral staircase, your hand trails along the cool stone wall, 20 feet of solid defense that has stood for centuries. You can't help but wonder how many other young guards have walked these same steps, felt the same mix of fear and determination before battle. Hundreds, certainly, maybe thousands, and Dunwell still stands. Sleep doesn't come easy when you know tomorrow brings battle. You toss on your pallet, mind racing through everything you've learned. The castle's defences seem impregnable in theory, but tomorrow real men will test them with real weapons and real determination. Men will die, maybe even you. Dreams, when they finally come, are fragmented. You're running through endless spiral staircases, shooting arrows that transform into birds mid-flight, drowning in a moat filled with sand instead of water. The warning bell jolts you awake before dawn. You bolt upright, momentarily disoriented until memory floods back. The siege, Lord Blackwell, the battering ram they've been building. You throw on your clothes and armor with practiced speed, leather jerkin over your tunic, mail coat that weighs heavy on your shoulders, helmet tucked under your arm as you rush from your quarters. The corridors buzz with activity despite the early hour. Guards hurry to their positions. Servants carry buckets of water to fill reservoirs near the walls and gatehouse. Kitchen staff prepare simple bread and cheese for defenders to grab as they pass. You snatch a hunk of bread, eating as you climb toward your assigned position. Captain Rowan ordered you to the gatehouse yesterday evening, right in the heart of the coming attack. The gatehouse rises before you, a massive stone structure projecting from the main southern wall. No mere doorway, but a fortress within a fortress. Master Corrin stands at its entrance, directing men as they make final preparations. Edgar Good, you're on the upper platform today. He points to a position on the second level of the gatehouse, where a row of murder holes opens directly over the gatehouse passage below. You nod, climbing the narrow stairs to your post. The upper platform stretches the length of the gatehouse passage, with small windows overlooking the approach and larger openings, murder holes, in the floor. Through these, defenders can drop objects onto attackers trapped in the passage below. Around you, other guards prepare for battle. Some stack rounded stones near the murder holes, ammunition for the coming fight. Others check the mechanism controlling the twin portcullises that conceal the passage at both ends, creating a deadly trap. A young guard named Piers joins you at your station, his face pale beneath a dusting of freckles. This will be his first battle. "You ever drop rocks on a man's head before?" he asks, voice cracking slightly. "First time for everything," you reply, trying to sound more confident than you feel. "What if I miss?" You shrug. "They'll be packed in tight down there. Hard to miss, really." This doesn't seem to comfort him. "Listen," you say, clapping his shoulder. "Just follow orders. Do what Master Corrin says. The gatehouse is designed to do most of the work for us." "Like a trap," Piers nods. "But we're the ones who spring it." "Exactly." Through the front window, you see activity in Lord Blackwell's camp. Men gather in formation, the massive battering ram, a tree trunk capped with iron and mounted on wheels, is dragged into position. A wooden shed has been constructed over it, protecting the men who will push it from arrow fire from above. "Looks big," Piers observes unnecessarily. "Big target," you counter. Master Corrin climbs to the platform, inspecting each position. "Remember your training," he tells everyone. "First portcullis stays up until they commit to the attack. Once they're in the passage, front portcullis down, rear remains up. When they're fully trapped, both portcullises down, and we open the murder holes." He catches your eye. "Edgar, you're in charge of the sand cauldron. Wait for my signal before dumping it." You nod, moving to the large iron pot suspended over a fire pit in the corner. Inside, sand heats slowly, not yet at the temperature Master Corrin wants. "Why sand?" Piers whispers as Corrin moves away. "Why not oil? Oil's expensive," you reply, remembering Willem's explanation. "And sand works better, gets under armor, causes terrible burns, and they can't shake it out easily." "Nasty," Piers says with grudging respect. "That's the point." Time passes slowly as the sun rises over the eastern hills, illuminating the valley. From your position, you have a clear view of Lord Blackwell's army assembling for the attack. Hundreds of men form up, many carrying large wooden shields to protect against arrow fire. The battering ram sits ready, surrounded by its crew. Master Corrin returns, checking the sand. "Almost hot enough. Remember, when I give the word, tip it directly into the center murder hole. Aim for the battering ram crew." He moves to the mechanism controlling the portcullises, huge wooden drums with chains wound around them. When released, the heavy iron gates will crash down in seconds. The sound of horns echoes across the valley. Lord Blackwell's attack is beginning. "Archers ready," Corin shouts. Men with bows take positions at the arrow loops along the gatehouse walls. Below, you hear Captain Rowan organizing defenders on the wall walks. "Here they come," someone mutters. The battering ram moves forward, pushed by at least 20 men within its wooden shed. Hundreds of soldiers advance alongside it, shields raised against the arrow fire that immediately begins from Dunwell's walls. Many fall, but others take their places, the formation inexorably approaching the gatehouse. "Hold steady," Corin commands. "Let them commit." Minutes stretch like hours as the attack force approaches. The battering ram crawls closer, its crew protected by both the wooden shed and the shield walls surrounding them. Arrows clatter against these defences, most failing to find flesh. "They're almost at the bridge," someone calls. The narrow stone bridge spans the moat before the gatehouse, another choke point in Dunwell's defences. The battering ram slows as its crew navigates this narrower path but continues forward. "Steady," Corin warns. "Not yet." Finally, the ram reaches the open mouth of the gatehouse. Its iron-capped head gleams in the morning sun as the crew positions it before the heavy wooden gates. "Now!" Master Corin shouts. The portcullis mechanism releases with a loud crack. The heavy iron grate crashes down behind the battering ram, trapping it and its crew in the entrance passage. Surprised shouts echo from below as the attackers realize they're caught. The first impact of the ram hits the wooden gate with a boom that shakes dust from the ceiling. Wood creaks but holds. "Stones ready," Corin commands. "First rank, drop." Guards along the murder holes lift heavy stones and drop them through the openings. Screams rise from below as rocks crash onto the wooden roof of the battering ram shed, splintering boards and crushing men beneath. A second impact hits the gate, weaker than the first. The crew is already being decimated by the falling rocks. Second rank, drop. More stones rain down. The screams intensify. Rear portcullis, down. The second iron grate crashes into place, completely sealing the passage. The battering ram crew is now trapped in a stone box with death raining from above. Edgar Sand now... You and two other guards lift the heavy cauldron of heated sand. The metal burns your hands through your gloves as you maneuver it over the central murder hole. "Tip it," you grunt. The sand pours through the opening like a hot waterfall. The screams that follow are unlike any you've heard before. Raw, primal sounds of agony as burning sand finds its way through joints in armor, under helmets, into eyes and mouths. "More stones," Corin orders. "Keep dropping until there's no movement." For several minutes, the defenders continue dropping rocks through the murder holes. The sounds from below gradually diminish until only groans remain, then silence. Master Corin peers through a small side opening. They're done. The ram crew is neutralized. But outside, the battle continues. Lord Blackwell's main force has reached the moat, where they face withering fire from archers on the walls. Some carry ladders, others bundles of wood and brush to fill in sections of the moat. "Damn persistent, aren't they?" Piers says, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Wouldn't be much of a siege if they gave up after one failed attack," you reply. Master Corin gestures to the rear staircase. "Edgar, take 4 men and check the rear gate for damage. The ram got in at least 2 hits." You select Piers and 3 others, descending to the lower level of the gatehouse. The rear gate, which would open into the outer bailey of the castle if both portcullises were raised, shows only minor splintering from the battering ram's impacts, nothing that threatens its integrity. "Looks solid," you report to a guard sergeant who meets you at the bottom of the stairs. "What about the passage?" The sergeant grimaces. "Messy. We'll need to clear the bodies and debris before we can use this entrance again. When? After the attack ends. No sense exposing men to arrow fire now." You nod, returning to the upper platform with your team. The battle outside has intensified. Some of Blackwell's men have managed to fill sections of the moat and are attempting to raise scaling ladders against the walls. Defenders pour arrows into them and use long hooks to push the ladders away. "They're not giving up easily," Corin observes grimly. "Will they breach the walls?" Piers asks, worry evident in his voice. "Not today," Corin shakes his head. "Scaling ladders rarely work against a well-defended wall, too exposed while climbing." As if to prove his point, a ladder loaded with armoured men tilts backwards suddenly, pulled by hooks from above. It crashes to the ground, spilling soldiers like a child's toys. Some lie motionless where they fall, others crawl away, broken and defeated. By midday, the attack falters. Lord Blackwell's horn sounds the retreat, and his forces withdraw beyond arrow range, leaving their dead and seriously wounded behind. The ground around Dunwell's walls is littered with bodies, broken ladders, and abandoned shields. Captain Rowan appears in the gatehouse, face streaked with sweat and grime, but grinning fiercely. "Well done, all of you, the gatehouse held perfectly." "Casualties?" Master Corin asks. 3 dead, 12 wounded on our side. None seriously. They lost at least 50, maybe more. The battering ram crew, all dead. We'll clear them once we're sure the enemy has fully withdrawn. Rowan turns to you. "Edgar, Lord Geoffrey wants a report on the gatehouse defence. You'll deliver it personally." Your heart skips. "Me? Why not Master Corin? He's needed here, and Lord Geoffrey specifically asked for you." Rowan's eyes twinkle. "Seems you've caught his interest, lad." You follow Captain Rowan back into the main castle, leaving the gatehouse defenders to maintain their posts. The sounds of battle fade behind you, replaced by the normal bustle of castle life, though tension remains in every face you pass. Lord Geoffrey waits in the small council chamber adjoining the great hall. Maps cover the large oak table, weighted down with carved stone markers representing both Dunwell's forces and Lord Blackwell's army. The Lord himself stands by a narrow window, gazing out at the battlefield below. He turns as you enter. "Ah, Edgar, Captain Rowan tells me you performed admirably today." You bow slightly. "The gatehouse design did most of the work, my lord." A smile flickers across his face. Humble. "Good. Tell me what happened, exactly as you saw it." You recount the battle, the approach of the battering ram, the trap of the portcullises, the stones and heated sand dropped through the murder holes. As you speak, you find yourself analysing the attack from both sides, noting how each defensive feature worked exactly as intended. Lord Geoffrey listens intently, occasionally nodding. When you finish, he returns to the window. 2 attacks failed, he says. The siege tower yesterday, the battering ram today. Lord Blackwell has lost perhaps 80 men with nothing to show for it. Will he retreat, my lord? You ask hopefully. Not yet. Geoffrey shakes his head. His pride won't allow it. He'll try at least once more before considering withdrawal. What will he try next? If he's smart? Trebuchet. Lord Geoffrey turns back to you. Stone-throwing engines positioned beyond arrow range. They can damage walls over time, create breaches. The thought of Dunwell's mighty walls crumbling sends a chill through you. Do we have defences against such weapons? You ask. Of course. Geoffrey gestures to the map. Willem will show you tomorrow. For now, you've earned rest. The next attack won't come before morning. They need time to build their engines. You bow and turn to leave, but Lord Geoffrey's voice stops you. Edgar, one more thing. My lord? Willem tells me you've taken well to your lessons, that you understand not just how our defences work, but why. You nod, uncertain where this is leading. Castle defence isn't just about strong walls, Geoffrey continues. It's about understanding your enemy, anticipating their moves, and having countermeasures ready before they attack. It's chess, played with stone and lives. He approaches, studying your face. My son would be your age now, had he lived. I see in you some of his quickness of mind. You stand straighter, unsure how to respond to such an unexpected personal revelation. Get some rest, Geoffrey says, his formal manner returning. Tomorrow Willem will show you our defences against trebuchets, and you'll learn why 60% of sieges end with the attackers simply giving up. You bow again and leave, mind reeling from the day's events and Lord Geoffrey's words. The comparison to his dead son weighs on you, an honour, certainly, but also a burden of expectation. The corridors seem quieter now as you make your way back to your quarters. The initial panic of the attack has subsided, replaced by the steady rhythm of a castle under siege. Guards patrol in pairs. Servants move purposefully, carrying supplies. Children who sought refuge from the surrounding villages play in corners, watched over by tired-looking adults. In your small room, you remove your armour piece by piece, muscles aching from tension and exertion. Your hands tremble slightly as the day's fear and excitement finally catch up with you. You survived your first real battle. The enemy tested Dunwell's defences and failed. But trebuchets tomorrow? Stone-throwing engines that could breach even these mighty walls. You stretch out on your pallet, too tired to eat despite your growling stomach. Sleep claims you almost instantly, your dreams filled with falling stones, screaming men, and the grim satisfaction of a well-designed trap sprung perfectly. Somewhere in the night, you wake briefly to the sound of rain pattering against the narrow window. You smile in the darkness. Rain means mud in the enemy camp. Wet, miserable soldiers questioning why they're sitting in the cold while you sleep dry and safe behind stone walls. Castle Dunwell has survived another day, and tomorrow you'll learn how it plans to survive many more. Dawn arrives with the steady drumbeat of rain against stone. For once, you don't mind being woken early. The weather feels like a gift, a defensive ally sent by God himself. You picture Lord Blackwell's men huddled under soaked tents, their campfires struggling against the downpour, mud sucking at their boots with every step. You dress quickly and head to the kitchens where castle staff dish out porridge and hard bread to a line of hungry defenders. The mood is surprisingly light after yesterday's victory. Guards joke and boast about their roles in repelling the attack. Edgar, Willem's voice cuts through the chatter. The old keeper of secrets stands in the doorway, somehow looking completely dry despite the rain outside. Finish quickly, we have work to do. You gulp down the last of your porridge and follow him. Instead of heading down to the secret passages, Willem leads you up through the keep, climbing narrow stairs that spiral higher than you've ever gone before. Where are we going? You ask, legs burning from the climb. The rain won't last forever, Willem replies cryptically. Best to take advantage while we can. Finally, you emerge onto the roof of the central keep. the highest point of Castle Dunwell. Rain pelts your face as you step into the open, but the view steals your breath. The entire castle spreads below you, towers, walls, courtyards, and beyond, the enemy camp sprawled across the valley floor like a sodden anthill. Willem points to the southern edge of the camp, where you can just make out large wooden frames taking shape through the rain. Trebuchets, he says. As Lord Geoffrey predicted, they'll have 3, perhaps 4 ready by tomorrow if the rain stops. Can they reach it from there, you ask, eyeing the considerable distance? Oh yes, a well-built trebuchet can hurl a stone weighing hundreds of pounds nearly 300 yards. They'll position them just beyond arrow range, far enough to be safe, close enough to hit our walls. The thought of massive stones crashing against Dunwell's defences makes your stomach tighten. Can the walls withstand such impacts? Willem's thin lips curve in a smile. That's what you're here to learn. He gestures to the walls below. First, understand that Dunwell's walls are not simply piles of stone. Remember what Mason Aldred told you about their construction? You recall the old mason's explanation. Solid stone facing with rubble fill inside, designed to flex slightly and absorb impacts. Exactly. A trebuchet stone might crack the outer facing, but the energy dissipates in the rubble core. The wall bends but doesn't break. Willem points to where workers swarm along the southern wall despite the rain. We're also reinforcing the likely impact points, adding timber supports behind the walls to absorb additional force. But if they keep hitting the same spot over and over, you press. A valid concern? Willem nods. Which brings us to our first active defence, night raids. He turns, leading you to a small covered area on the roof where a table holds maps and wooden models. Rain drums on the canopy overhead as Willem traces a route on the map. Tonight, if the rain slackens, Captain Rowan will lead 20 men out through the postern gate on the eastern wall. They'll circle around through this ravine, approach the trebuchet construction site from behind, and do as much damage as possible before retreating. Sabotage, you say, understanding dawning. Precisely. Burn what will burn, break what will break, kill any guards, and return before they can mount a proper defence. The eastern postern, you ask. I didn't know there was a gate there. Willem raises an eyebrow. There are many things about Dunwell you don't yet know. The eastern postern is hidden behind a false rock face, the perfect sally port for nighttime raids. You remember the term from your training, sally port, a small concealed gate used for surprise attacks and evacuations. These weren't just emergency exits, Willem explains, as if reading your thoughts. They were medieval versions of ghosting an unwanted party guest. Out the back door, while no one's looking, the image makes you smile despite the grim subject. What if the raids don't work, you ask? If they complete the trebuchets? Then we employ our second defence, counter-battery fire. Willem leads you to the eastern edge of the roof, pointing to a tower where workers assemble what looks like an enormous crossbow on a rotating platform. Ballista, Willem explains, similar to the Springolds you saw yesterday, but larger. Can fire a bolt nearly 400 yards with enough force to shatter a trebuchet's frame. We have 3, normally stored until needed. You study the weapon with newfound respect, so we can hit them from beyond their effective range. In theory, Willem cautions, accuracy at such distances is challenging, but even forcing them to rebuild or relocate buys us time, and time, he sweeps his arm to indicate the sodden enemy camp, is very much our friend. As if to emphasize his point, a gust of wind drives the rain harder, momentarily obscuring the valley in a grey curtain. The rain alone costs Lord Blackwell dearly, Willem continues. His men are cold, wet, and miserable. Disease will spread. Food spoils faster. Morale plummets. While we stay warm and dry, you observe. For the most part, Willem agrees, though sieges bring their own discomforts, even for defenders, which leads us to our third and perhaps most important defensive strategy, psychological warfare. He leads you back under the canopy, shaking water from his cloak. Castle defense isn't just about repelling physical attacks. It's about breaking the enemy's will to continue, making them question whether the prize is worth the price. He unrolls another map, this one showing Lord Blackwell's lands to the south. Blackwell wants Dunwell because it controls the river trade and the northern pass, a valuable prize certainly, but every day his army sits in the rain is a day they're not working his fields, guarding his own borders, or generating tax revenue. Willem taps the map. A large medieval army costs roughly 500 gold pieces daily to maintain. After 3 weeks of going nowhere, many lords simply run out of money. So we just wait them out? The strategy seems almost too simple. With style, Willem grins. Tonight, weather permitting, Lord Geoffrey will host a feast on the southern battlements, visible to Blackwell's camp. Roasted meats, fresh bread, wine flowing freely. Your eyes widen, taunting them, showing them the futility of their efforts, Willem corrects. Medieval trash talk didn't need words, just a chicken leg waved tauntingly from a tower window. You laugh at the image. We'll also light more fires than necessary tonight, Willem continues. Make the castle seem warm and comfortable. Have musicians play loud enough to be heard in their camp. The contrast between their misery and our apparent ease will weigh on their spirits. This aspect of castle defense fascinates you, fighting not with weapons but with perceptions. What else? You ask eagerly. Deception plays a key role. Later today, we'll place helmets on poles along sections of the wall, makes it appear more heavily guarded than it is. We'll sound horns and drums at random intervals, creating the impression of reinforcements or activities that keep them guessing. Rain continues to drum overhead as Willem outlines more psychological tactics, creating the impression of limitless supplies by conspicuously moving covered carts around the castle, having archers shoot flaming arrows into the sky at night purely for show, but unsettling to watching enemies, even spreading rumours among prisoners who might be ransomed and returned. But our greatest psychological weapon, Willem concludes, is the castle itself, standing tall, seemingly impregnable, day after day despite their best efforts. The lesson continues as Willem shows you maps of previous sieges of Dunwell, where attackers position their forces, what strategies they attempted, how they eventually failed. You begin to see patterns emerging, understand the deep-layered thinking behind castle defense. Now, Willem says, rolling up the last map, let's see about those trebuchets. He leads you back down the endless spiral stairs to the armory, where Master Aldwin, the weapons master, inspects iron-tipped bolts for the ballistas. Ah, Willem, this must be young Edgar. Aldwin looks up from his work, sizing you up with eyes that miss nothing. Here to learn about our nasty countermeasures, I assume. Willem nods. Show him the firebolts. Aldwin leads you to a rack where bolts with strange bulbous tips are stored carefully away from the others. Special design, he explains. Hollow iron head filled with a mixture of pitch, sulphur, quicklime, and other nasty ingredients. On impact, it shatters and spreads fire that water won't easily quench. For the trebuchets, you ask? Among other targets, Aldwin nods, though we need clear weather to use them effectively. The weapon master shows you other specialized projectiles, bolts designed to shred ropes and cables, heavier bolts for maximum structural damage, even bolts that split into multiple points to target groups of men. Medieval siege weapons were impressive, Aldwin says, but castle defenders weren't just sitting around waiting to be crushed. We developed countermeasures that turned attacking a castle into a deadly game of medieval chess. The rain continues throughout the day, slackening occasionally but never fully stopping. From the walls, you watch Lord Blackwell's men struggle to construct their trebuchets in the worsening conditions. The ground around their camp turns to mud, making movement of heavy materials difficult. One wooden frame, nearly complete, tilts dangerously as its foundation shifts in the sodden earth. Nothing ruins a good siege like discovering your heavy siege tower is slowly sinking into 6 inches of mud, Captain Rowan observes, joining you at the wall. Will they abandon the trebuchets, you ask? Rowan shakes his head. Not yet, but every hour of rain is an hour in our favour. Speaking of which, he lowers his voice, the raid is confirmed for tonight. Lord Geoffrey wants you to join us. Your heart skips. Me? Why? You know the castle's secrets now. Time you learned how we take the fight to them. Rowan claps your shoulder. Eastern postern, midnight. Wear dark clothes, light armour only. Bring a knife and a sword. Nothing that rattles. Pride and fear war within you as Rowan walks away. A night raid beyond the walls. Dangerous but exciting. A chance to strike directly at the enemy instead of waiting behind stone. The afternoon passes slowly. You help where needed, carrying supplies, relieving guards for short breaks, checking the integrity of sections of wall. The castle settles into the steady rhythm of siege life, the initial panic of the first attacks now replaced by a grim routine. In the Great Hall, preparations for the evening's psychological warfare begin. Tables are set near the southern windows, visible from the enemy camp. Haunches of beef and whole pigs turn on spits in the kitchen. Musicians tune their instruments. Lord Geoffrey has ordered the hall's enormous stores of candles lit all at once, a display of conspicuous consumption meant to demoralize watching enemies. As dusk approaches, the rain finally stops. Steam rises from the sodden ground as the last rays of sun break through the clouds. In the enemy camp, activity increases. Soldiers emerging from tents, fires rekindled. From your position on the wall, you watch as Lord Geoffrey and his household knights take their places at the tables near the windows. Servants bring platters heaped with food, flagons of wine, fresh bread still steaming. The windows are thrown open despite the evening chill, allowing the sounds of music, laughter, and the smells of roasting meat to carry across to the enemy camp. Think they can see it? Asks Piers, who has joined you for the evening watch. That's the point, you reply. Let them smell what they can't have, see the comfort they're missing, hear the music they can't enjoy. Through a spyglass borrowed from a sergeant, you study the enemy camp. Men gather, pointing toward the castle. Even at this distance, their envy is palpable. Hard to maintain your fighting spirit when your stomach's empty and the enemy is feasting, you observe. And tomorrow those same men have to dodge our arrows while pushing trebuchets through mud, Piers adds with grim satisfaction. Night falls fully, but the castle remains ablaze with light. Every torch and lantern lit, fires burning in all visible fireplaces, the great hall glowing like a beacon. Meanwhile, the enemy camp appears as a scatter of small fires, dim and meagre by comparison. As your watch ends, you return to your quarters to prepare for the midnight raid. You don a dark tunic and leggings, the lightest male shirt available, and soft leather boots that make little sound. A knife goes in your belt, a sword strapped to your back where it won't swing and hit things in the darkness. Your stomach knots with anticipation as you make your way to the eastern wall. The castle feels different at night, shadows deeper, sounds muffled, every corner concealing potential mystery. At the eastern postern you find Captain Rowan with 15 men similarly equipped for stealth. Willem stands with them, showing a map to the captain by lantern light. "This ravine will shield your approach," Willem is saying. "It emerges 50 yards behind where they're building the largest trebuchet. 2 guards posted, possibly more now they've increased alertness." Rowan nods, memorizing the route. "Objectives remain the same. Burn the framework, destroy any completed mechanisms, kill the engineers if possible." "Precisely," Willem confirms. "But your primary goal is damage to the siege engines. Don't risk men unnecessarily for kills." The old man notices you hovering at the edge of the group. "Ah, Edgar. Good, you'll go with Rowan. Learn how we take the fight to them." Rowan introduces you to the raid team, all experienced guards chosen for their stealth and fighting ability. You feel distinctly out of place among these veterans, but they accept you without comment. "Night vision is critical," Rowan tells everyone. "No torches. Follow the man ahead of you. If separated, head back to the ravine and wait. Kill silently when possible. Questions? There are none. These men have done this before." Willem leads your group to what appears to be a blank section of wall. He presses specific stones in sequence, and a section swings inward, the hidden postern gate. Beyond lies darkness, the steep slope of the moat, and enemy territory. "Good hunting," Willem whispers as you file past him. The raid has begun. Outside the walls, the world feels dangerously exposed after days within Dunwell's protection. You follow closely behind Rowan as he leads the group down the moat's inner slope, across the narrow bottom and up the outer edge. The ground squishes beneath your feet, mud from the day's rain making each step treacherous. No one speaks. Communication happens through hand signals and nods as you make your way to the ravine Willem identified. The narrow gully cuts through the landscape like a scar, providing perfect cover for your approach. Occasionally you freeze as enemy patrols pass nearby, holding your breath until the danger recedes. The journey takes nearly an hour, slow, careful movement through muddy terrain, always watching for enemy scouts. Finally, Rowan holds up a fist. You've reached the end of the ravine. The trebuchet construction site lies just ahead, visible as looming wooden frames against the night sky. Rowan gathers everyone close, issuing final instructions in the barest whisper. The group will split, half to target the largest trebuchet, half to hit the smaller one nearby. You're assigned to Rowan's group approaching the main target. 4 men break off, disappearing into the darkness to your right. Rowan leads your team in a low crouch toward the primary trebuchet, a massive wooden frame standing 3 times the height of a man, its throwing arm raised like a finger pointing accusingly at the night sky. 2 guards patrol its perimeter, looking bored and miserable in the damp night. Beyond them, a small tent likely houses the engineers and builders. Rowan points to the guards, then to 2 of your companions. The men nod, breaking away to circle behind the sentries. You watch, heart pounding, as they approach unseen, then strike. Quick, efficient knife thrusts that drop both guards before they can cry out. The path clear, your group rushes to the trebuchet. Up close, the war machine is even more impressive. A framework of massive timbers joined with iron bands, a counterweight box filled with stones, a sling designed to hold projectiles weighing hundreds of pounds. And all of it built for one purpose: to destroy the home you've come to love. Rowan distributes small clay pots from his pack, fire pots containing a sticky, flammable mixture. Others pull out saws and begin attacking critical support beams. You're handed a hammer and tasked with destroying the complex pulley system that raises the throwing arm. For 10 frantic minutes you work in near silence. The only sounds are the rasp of saws, the muffled thud of hammers wrapped in cloth, the splintering of wood. You smash delicate mechanism components, feeling a fierce satisfaction with each precision stroke. Across the way, flames suddenly leap from the second trebuchet. Your group takes this as the signal to light your own fires. The fire pots break against wood saturated with oil by a forward-thinking raider. Flames catch immediately, racing up the framework. "Engineers!" someone hisses. Men emerge from the nearby tent, shouting in alarm. Rowan signals the retreat before they can organize a response. Your group melts back toward the ravine, the chaos behind you growing as more enemy soldiers respond to the commotion. Shouts fill the night, horns blow, the flames rise higher, silhouetting running figures against their glow. The retreat feels faster than the approach, adrenaline pushing you forward through the mud and darkness. Twice you nearly fall, saved only by the steadying hand of the man behind you. The sounds of pursuit fade as you reach the ravine, its twisting path impossible to follow without knowledge of its course. An hour later, muddy, exhausted, but triumphant, your group slips back through the postern gate into Dunwell's protective embrace. Lord Geoffrey himself waits with Willem to receive your report. "Both targets burning," Rowan reports crisply. "Secondary target completely destroyed. Primary damage beyond repair. No casualties on our side." Lord Geoffrey's smile is fierce in the lantern light. "Excellent. That should set them back at least 3 days. The mud from the rain will make rebuilding even more difficult," Willem adds. "Well executed, Captain." As the group disperses, Lord Geoffrey gestures for you to stay. "Your first taste of offensive action, Edgar. What did you learn? You consider carefully before answering." "That castle defence doesn't stop at the walls. We take the fight to them on our terms, when and where we choose." Geoffrey nods approvingly. "Precisely. Now get some rest. Dawn comes early and I want you on the walls to see Lord Blackwell's face when he discovers what we've done to his precious trebuchets." You make your way back to your quarters, exhaustion and exhilaration battling within you. Tonight, you were not just a defender hiding behind walls. You were the attacker bringing the fight to the enemy. And tomorrow you'll witness the fruits of your labour. Another day of delay, another test of Lord Blackwell's resolve, another small victory for Castle Dunwell. As you settle onto your pallet, muscles aching pleasantly from the night's exertion, you find yourself smiling in the darkness. The castle has revealed another of its secrets, not just how to keep enemies out, but how to strike back when they least expect it. Morning arrives with triumphant horns blasting from Dunwell's towers. You drag yourself from sleep, body aching from the night raid but spirit light. Through your narrow window you see guards lining the battlements, cheering and gesturing toward the enemy camp. You dress quickly and rush to join them. From the southern wall, the view is everything you'd hoped for. Lord Blackwell's trebuchet construction site lies in ruins, blackened timbers still smoking, the largest frame collapsed into a jumble of broken wood. Men scurry about like disturbed ants, trying to salvage what they can while their commander rages visibly from horseback. Beautiful sight, isn't it? You turn to find Archer Ellie beside you, grinning as she surveys the destruction. Worth the mud and terror, you agree, showing her your hands still stained with soot from the fire pots. You were part of the raid? Her eyebrows rise. Moving up in the world, Edgar. Before you can respond, a shout goes up from further along the wall. Lord Geoffrey has emerged onto the battlements, resplendent in polished armour that catches the morning sun. The castle's defenders cheer as he raises his arms. "Or men of Dunwell," his voice carries clearly. "Last night's action has cost Lord Blackwell dearly. His trebuchets are destroyed, his timetable broken, his men's morale weakened. More cheers erupt. Geoffrey waits for them to subside. But our work is not done. Blackwell is proud and stubborn. He will try new approaches, test us in different ways. Stay vigilant. Remember your training." He points toward the enemy camp. "They are out there in mud and discomfort. We are here, behind walls built by generations of wise defenders. Time is our ally." The speech ends to thunderous approval. As Lord Geoffrey departs, the mood along the wall remains buoyant. Guards exchange jokes and boasts, pointing out particularly amusing scenes of confusion in the enemy camp. You spend the morning on wall duty, watching as Lord Blackwell attempts to reorganize his forces. The failed trebuchet strategy clearly requires a new approach, but the enemy seems uncertain how to proceed. Men gather in small groups around their commanders, gesturing towards the castle and arguing visibly even at this distance. "They're dividing into factions," observes Sergeant Mills, an older guard with a grey-streaked beard who oversees your section of wall. "Some want to continue the siege, others want to withdraw. That's how it starts, doubt creeping in." You nod, recalling Willem's lessons on the psychological aspects of siege warfare. "How long before they give up?" Mills scratches his beard. "Depends on Blackwell himself. He's the type to throw good money after bad, but every failed attack weakens his position with his own men. By midday, new activity stirs in the enemy camp. Wagons arrive from the south, carrying what appear to be large bundles covered with cloth. Men unload them carefully at the far edge of the camp, keeping their distance. "What are those?" you ask Mills, who studies them through a spyglass. His expression darkens. "Trouble. Get Captain Rowan." When Rowan arrives, Mills hands him the spyglass wordlessly. The captain watches for several moments, face grim. "Biological warfare," he finally says. "The cloth-covered bundles. Dead animals. Probably diseased." Your stomach turns. "They're going to throw them at us." "Classic siege tactic," Rowan nods. "Catapult diseased animal carcasses over the walls. Hope to spread illness among defenders." "Can they reach us from there?" You eye the distance anxiously. "With a mangonel, yes, not as powerful as a trebuchet, but enough for light projectiles." Rowan lowers the spyglass. "I need to inform Lord Geoffrey. Mills, double the watch and alert the healers to prepare for possible disease outbreaks." As Rowan strides away, Mills turns to you. "We have countermeasures for this. Go find Willem. He'll want you for the next phase of your education." You find Willem in the castle's small library consulting ancient-looking scrolls with healer Agnes, an older woman responsible for Dunwell's medical needs. They look up as you enter. "Ah, Edgar." Willem nods. "I assume you've seen Blackwell's latest strategy?" "Dead animals," you confirm, "for catapulting over the walls." Agnes sniffs disapprovingly. "Barbaric, but not unexpected. We've been preparing since the siege began." Willem rolls up the scroll he was examining. "Time for your next lesson. How castles defend against disease during sieges." He leads you from the library to a part of the castle you've never visited, the healer's quarters. The space consists of several rooms surrounding a central garden where herbs grow in neat rows despite the late season. Castle medicine wasn't just about treating arrow wounds, Willem explains as Agnes prepares various powders and liquids. Disease killed more people during sieges than direct combat. Agnes looks up from her work. 3 main threats during a siege: bad water, spoiled food, and contagion. We defend against each differently. She holds up a ceramic jar. Vinegar. Our first defense against the carcasses they'll throw. We'll douse any animal remains immediately, then remove and bury them in lime pits beyond the eastern wall. Won't that expose men to disease, you ask? They'll wear vinegar-soaked cloths over their faces and gloves on their hands, Agnes explains. Not perfect, but better than nothing. She shows you other preparations: herbal infusions to boost strength against illness, charcoal to treat poisoned water, salves for skin ailments that arise in crowded conditions. Fresh vegetables ran out within the first week, she continues, gesturing to bundles of dried herbs hanging from the ceiling. That raises the risk of scurvy and other deficiency diseases. We counter with preserved rosehips, pine needle tea, dried berries, anything with the essences that prevent the gums from bleeding. Willem adds, castle inhabitants relied heavily on beer and wine during sieges, not just for morale, but because fermentation made these drinks safer than potentially contaminated water. Beer has been keeping medieval defenders both hydrated and slightly more optimistic about being surrounded by enemies since 1066. Agnes smiles at this. True enough. I prescribe a daily ration for everyone, children included, safer than well water if the dead animals get too close. The lesson continues as they explain how the castle's design accounts for health concerns. The latrines, normally emptying through chutes in the outer walls, can be redirected to sealed pits if necessary. Rainwater collection systems provide clean water if the well becomes suspect. Specific chambers can be isolated if contagious disease breaks out. Medieval castle Wi-Fi would have had serious bandwidth issues, Willem says dryly, but the only thing streaming was the occasional leak in the roof. Still, information moved throughout the castle. Certain signals and messengers kept everyone informed without unnecessary contact if disease threatened. A guard interrupts, bringing news that the enemy has begun constructing mangonels, smaller catapults designed for lighter projectiles. They'll be ready by evening, Willem predicts. Agnes, ensure the removal teams are prepared. Edgar, you'll help coordinate the castle's response when the first carcasses arrive. The rest of the day passes in preparation. Teams of men receive instructions on safely handling diseased material. Others reinforce the screens that protect the well and food storage areas from anything thrown over the walls. Wood and quicklime are stockpiled for burning and burying contaminated remains. By evening, Lord Blackwell's intentions become clear. 3 mangonels stand ready just beyond arrow range, their throwing arms visible against the sunset. Beside each sits a cart covered with cloth, the shapes underneath unmistakably carcasses. Lord Geoffrey calls a council in the Great Hall. Captains, healers, and key defenders including, to your surprise, yourself. They'll begin at dawn, Geoffrey predicts, studying the map of Dunwell's layout, aiming for the main courtyard, the well, if they can reach it, anywhere people gather. The screens will catch most projectiles, Captain Rowan offers. Removal teams are ready for those that get through. What about a counter-strategy, asks Willem. Medieval defenders weren't just sitting around waiting to be hit with rotting sheep. Geoffrey's mouth twitches. Indeed, what do you suggest? Return some of their gifts, Willem says, with interest. A plan forms quickly. While Dunwell's defenders will handle the biological attack directly, they'll also prepare a nighttime surprise. The castle's own mangonels, smaller than trebuchets but perfectly adequate for the task, will be assembled on the wall overnight. Their ammunition, the beehives kept in the castle orchard, along with wasp nests collected from the surrounding forest over the past week. "They send us death," Geoffrey summarizes. "We send them pain and confusion. The buzzing alone will disrupt their camp, not to mention hundreds of stings." The meeting concludes with assignments. You're tasked with overseeing one of the removal teams, men who will handle any diseased carcasses that land within the castle. Protective measures are explained: vinegar-soaked cloths, thick gloves, quick burial in lime pits. "Remember," Agnes tells your team later, demonstrating the proper wrapping techniques, "disease isn't like an arrow. You can't see it coming. Your only defense is caution and cleanliness." As night falls, you help prepare the castle's response. 3 small mangonels are assembled in sections along the southern wall, hidden from enemy view until needed. Beehives are carefully moved from the orchard, sealed with cloth that can be removed just before firing. Wasp nests, even more dangerous, are handled with extreme care by men in thick protective clothing. "One nest contains hundreds of angry wasps," explains Goodwife Thea, who oversees the castle's beekeeping. "Imagine being in a tent when one of these breaks open inside, or trying to sleep with bees swarming your entire camp. You wince at the thought. Talk about returning unwanted gifts with interest," she adds with grim satisfaction. Shortly before midnight, you take a break from preparations, finding a quiet corner of the wall to rest. The enemy camp spreads below, dimly lit by scattered fires. In just a few hours, they'll launch their attack, unaware of the stinging response that awaits them. "Nervous about tomorrow?" You turn to find Piers joining you at the wall. The young guard has grown noticeably more confident since the siege began, his earlier anxiety replaced by determined focus. "A bit," you admit. "Arrows and battering rams are one thing. Disease is—" You trail off, searching for words. "Invisible," Piers finishes. "Like fighting a ghost." You nod. "Exactly. My grandmother lived through the Great Sickness in 29, Piers says, gazing toward the enemy camp. Said, it was worse than any war, at least with soldiers. You can see them coming. The two of you stand in silence for a while, contemplating the invisible battle that will join the visible one tomorrow. Get some sleep if you can, you finally tell him. Morning will come too soon. Your own rest proves fitful, dreams filled with rotting animals and swarming insects. You wake before dawn, dressing quickly in the clothes prepared for the removal team, older garments that can be burned afterward if necessary. The first light of dawn brings the expected attack. Horns sound the alarm as the enemy mangonels launch their first volley. Dark shapes arc through the early morning sky, trailing foul smells even before they land. 3 carcasses clear the walls, a sheep and 2 pigs from the look of them. Already bloated and rotting, they land with wet thuds in different parts of the courtyard, thankfully missing the well and food storage areas protected by the screens erected yesterday. Your team moves into action immediately. Men with vinegar-soaked cloths over their faces approach the nearest carcass, the sheep, and douse it thoroughly with more vinegar from buckets. Using long hooks, they maneuver the reeking mass onto a stretcher, then carry it quickly to the eastern postern gate where a lime pit awaits. The process repeats with each new projectile that clears the walls. Most are caught by the protective screens, wooden frames covered with thick cloth that hang above vulnerable areas. These catch the carcasses, allowing defenders to lower them carefully for disposal rather than letting them smash uncontrolled into living areas. By mid-morning, the enemy has exhausted their first supply of grim ammunition. Nearly 30 diseased animals have been launched, all carefully neutralized and buried by your teams. The smell lingers, but Agnes's herbal burners, pots of fragrant herbs set alight in strategic locations, help combat the worst of it. Lord Geoffrey calls for the counterattack at noon, when the enemy camp is most active. The hidden mangonels are wheeled into position, loaded with their unusual ammunition and aimed at key targets: the command tents, eating areas, and sleeping quarters. Fire when ready, Geoffrey commands. The first hive launches with a whoosh, tracing a perfect arc toward the enemy's central area. More follow quickly, hives and wasp nests raining down on Lord Blackwell's camp. Even from the distance of the wall, you can see the chaos erupting as the containers break open on impact, releasing their angry swarms. Men run in all directions, swatting frantically at invisible attackers. Horses break free of their pickets, panicking and trampling tents. The entire camp devolves into confusion as more stinging projectiles land among them. That should keep them occupied, Captain Rowan observes with satisfaction. Hard to plan your next attack when you're being stung in uncomfortable places. The enemy's biological attack resumes sporadically through the afternoon, but with noticeably less organization. Your teams handle each new carcass efficiently, the process now routine despite its grim nature. As evening approaches, a new development catches everyone's attention. At the northern edge of the enemy camp, men dig furiously, creating what appears to be the entrance to a tunnel. Sapping, Willem says grimly when summoned to observe. They're going to try tunneling under the walls. This siege tactic, attempting to undermine castle foundations or create a passage beneath the defences, presents a new threat. But again, Dunwell has countermeasures ready. Countermining is crucial when attackers tunnel under walls, Willem explains as he organises the response. We dig our own tunnels to intercept them. Expert miners from the village are called upon, men who normally work the nearby iron mine but now turn their skills to castle defence. Using their knowledge of soil conditions and underground detection techniques, they determine the likely path of the enemy tunnel and begin their own shaft to intersect it. They'll aim for the North Tower, predicts Miner Walsh, a grizzled man with hands like leather. Shortest distance, relatively solid ground, will cut them off halfway. You watch in fascination as the miners sink a vertical shaft in the inner courtyard, then begin a horizontal tunnel aimed directly at the anticipated enemy path. Their skill is evident in the precise shoring up of the passage, the careful testing sounds of enemy digging, the quiet efficiency of their work. When we detect them getting close, Walsh explains during a break, his face streaked with dirt, we have several options: flood their tunnel with water from barrels we've prepared, release smoke to drive them back, or, if we're feeling particularly unwelcoming, unleash the castle hounds. The mental image of attack dogs charging through a narrow tunnel makes you shudder. Not a fate you'd wish on anyone. Many castles kept specialised anti-siege equipment ready, Willem adds, overseeing the mining operation, including wooden frames called hoardings that could be quickly assembled to extend the range defenders could drop things from. He points to stacks of pre-cut wooden beams stored in a nearby shed. If they manage to reach the base of the wall with their tunnel, we can extend our murder holes outward to continue dropping rocks directly on their exit point. The day fades into evening, the castle settling into an uneasy rhythm. The enemy's biological attack has paused, either from exhaustion of materials or due to the disruption caused by your B counterattack. The only active threat remains the tunnel, progressing slowly beneath the ground. In the great hall that night, you join other defenders for a simple meal. The mood is subdued but not defeated. Each attack repelled strengthens confidence in Dunwell's defences. Lord Geoffrey moves among the tables, speaking with different groups, boosting morale with his presence and quiet confidence. He pauses at your table. "Edgar, your teams performed admirably today." "Thank you, my lord," you reply, honoured by the recognition. "The preparations made it straightforward." Geoffrey nods. That's the secret of castle defence, preparation for every contingency. He glances around the hall. How are the villagers holding up? You follow his gaze to where refugee families cluster in corners, children sleeping on makeshift pallets, adults conversing in low voices. "Cramped, but managing," you answer honestly. Daily life during a siege took place in uncomfortable conditions. The castle population swelled beyond its normal size as peasants from surrounding land sought protection behind its walls. Space became precious. "Indeed," Geoffrey sighs. Great halls that normally hosted feasts transformed into communal sleeping areas. Privacy vanished. Noble families who typically enjoyed private chambers might share space with dozens of others. Despite the hardships, you note how the community has adapted. Children play quiet games in corners. Women work together at spinning and sewing. Men repair tools and weapons. Life continues, constrained but not stopped by the siege surrounding them. The psychological impact of siege life cannot be overstated, Geoffrey observes, following your thoughts. Boredom, fear, and claustrophobia affected everyone trapped inside. To combat this, castle life continued with structure and routine. Guards maintained regular watches, craftspeople continued essential work, and religious services provided comfort and time markers. He gestures to a group playing chess in one corner, others rolling dice nearby. Games like chess, dice, and backgammon helped pass the endless hours of waiting. Being trapped in a castle during siege was like the world's worst vacation. Terrible accommodations, limited menu, and the neighbours keep trying to kill you. You laugh despite yourself, appreciating his dry humour even in these circumstances. "Get some rest," Geoffrey advises. "Tomorrow brings new challenges. The miners expect to intercept the enemy tunnel before noon. As you make your way to your quarters, you realize how much your perspective has changed since the siege began. The castle no longer feels like just walls and towers. It's a living system designed across generations specifically to shelter life against those who would take it. And you are now part of that system, not just hiding behind stone, but actively participating in the intricate dance of defence that has kept Dunwell standing for centuries. Sleep comes easier tonight, despite the lingering smell of vinegar on your hands and the knowledge that enemies work beneath your feet, digging ever closer. Dunwell has stood against such threats before. The stone remembers, even if the people change. Your last thought before drifting off is a strangely comforting one. 60% of castle sieges ended with attackers simply giving up, and Lord Blackwell has already lost far more than he's gained. The sound of metal on stone wakes you. Tap, tap, tap. It takes a moment to realize what you're hearing. The enemy miners, their tunneling has progressed far enough that the sound now carries through the bedrock beneath the castle. You dress quickly and head to the north courtyard, where Dunwell's own mining operation continues day and night. The vertical shaft descends 30 feet into the earth, with a horizontal tunnel now extending toward the enemy diggers. Men emerge from below, dirt-covered and sweating despite the cool morning air, as others descend to replace them. Miner Walsh stands beside the shaft, ear pressed to a strange device, a wooden drum with a metal rod extending from its centre. "What's that?" you ask, approaching cautiously. "Listening post," Walsh explains. "The drum amplifies vibrations coming through the ground, helps us track their progress." He offers you the device. Listen. You press your ear to the wooden surface. The tapping sounds much clearer, distinct impacts of metal on stone. Voices too, though too faint to make out words. "How close?" you ask, returning the listening device. 50 feet and closing, Walsh answers grimly. They're making good progress. Sandy soil on their approach. Lord Geoffrey arrives, accompanied by Willem and Captain Rowan. "Report," he commands Walsh. "They'll reach the outer foundation by nightfall at their current pace," the miner explains. "Our intercept tunnel will cross their path in approximately 4 hours, assuming consistent progress. And if they detect our approach, they'll either abandon their tunnel or try to fight us below ground." Walsh's expression darkens. "Tunnel fighting is unpleasant. Confined spaces, limited weapons, no room to maneuver. More men die from smoke and cave-ins than blades." Geoffrey nods thoughtfully. "Recommendations?" "Flood their tunnel," Walsh says without hesitation. "We've prepared water barrels. Once we break through, we release the water into their passage, drowns anyone inside and makes the tunnel unusable." "Efficient," Geoffrey agrees. "Make the preparations." As the men disperse to their tasks, Willem gestures for you to follow him. You've seen the major defences of Dunwell: walls, gatehouse, towers. Now for something more subtle, the hidden network beneath. He leads you to a small storage room near the North Tower. Inside, barrels of water are being positioned on wheeled platforms, ready to be moved to the mining shaft when needed. But Willem ignores these, heading straight to the back wall. Castle Dunwell has 17 secret passages, he says, pressing a pattern of stones that causes a section of wall to swing inward. You've seen the eastern postern used for raids. This is something different. The hidden door reveals a narrow tunnel sloping gently downward. Willem lights a lamp and leads you inside, closing the door behind you. The most important doors in medieval castles were often the ones nobody could see, he explains as you descend. Behind massive walls and towers lurked networks of hidden passageways, concealed doors, and secret tunnels that served as both emergency exits and strategic advantages. The passage is narrow but well constructed, with stone walls and a low ceiling that forces you to duck in places. After 100 paces, it opens into a small chamber with several tunnels branching outward. "The northern hub," Willem announces proudly. "From here, passages connect to every tower in the northern section of the castle, plus access points to the main mining operation." You stare in wonder at the hidden network. "How old are these?" The main passages were built with the castle itself. Each generation added more. Willem points to a rough opening in one wall. That's fresh, cut last week to connect with our counter-mining effort. Through this new opening, you can hear the distant sounds of picks and shovels as Dunwell's miners work to intercept the enemy tunnel. Most of these passages served practical purposes, Willem continues, leading you down another branch, connecting different buildings within the complex during peaceful times. During sieges, they allowed defenders to move reinforcements quickly without crossing open areas where they might be targeted. The tunnel emerges in a small chamber beneath the North Tower. A spiral staircase leads upward, while 3 more passages branch off in different directions. The entire castle is honeycombed with these, you realize aloud. Not quite the entire castle, Willem corrects. That would weaken the structure too much, but strategic connections that serve military purposes. He eyes you appraisingly. Few know the full network. Most guards learn only the sections relevant to their posts. "Why show me?" you ask. "Lord Geoffrey's orders," Willem says simply. "He sees something in you." potential. Before you can pursue this surprising revelation, a distant shout echoes through the passage you just exited. They've broken through. The voice is faint but urgent. Willem's expression sharpens. The countermining operation come. You follow him through yet another hidden passage, this one sloping more steeply downward. The air grows damp and cool as you descend. Finally, the tunnel opens into a larger chamber filled with frantic activity. The miners have indeed broken through to the enemy tunnel. A ragged hole approximately 3 feet across reveals a glimpse of the enemy passage. Water barrels stand ready, positioned above the breach point. Walsh coordinates the operation, shouting orders as men position the barrels. "First wave ready! Everyone back!" The miners retreat to the edges of the chamber as 4 men tip the first barrel. Water gushes through the opening, cascading into the enemy tunnel. Shouts of alarm echo from beyond the breach. "Second wave," Walsh commands. Another barrel empties into the hole. The shouts from the enemy side grow more panicked. You catch glimpses of men scrambling away from the rising water, their tunnel sloping upward toward the castle, but now becoming a deadly trap as water fills the lowest sections. Third wave. The final barrels empty in a rush. The sounds from the enemy tunnel fade, replaced by the gurgle of water finding its level. "Blocked?" Willem asks Walsh. The miner nods with grim satisfaction. "Flooded for at least 60 feet. Anyone caught in the first section is drowned. The rest will be fighting mud for days if they try to dig through again." "Excellent work," Willem tells the miners. "Lord Geoffrey will be pleased." As the men begin clearing equipment, Willem draws you aside. The tunnels were built with this specific scenario in mind, positioned to allow quick countermining operations with water sources prepared for flooding enemy approaches. Everything planned in advance, you marvel. Nothing left to chance. That's how castles survived, Willem nods. Anticipating every possible attack and preparing countermeasures decades or even centuries before they were needed. You follow him back through the secret passages, emerging eventually into the main courtyard where Lord Geoffrey awaits the report. "Enemy tunnel neutralized," Willem informs him, "flooded with minimal risk to our men." Geoffrey's face shows satisfaction, but not surprise. "As designed. Have the foundation walls checked for any damage, but I doubt they penetrated far enough to be concerning." "Already ordered," Willem confirms. Geoffrey turns to you. "Edgar, I want you to take charge of the Eastern Wall Watch today. Captain Rowan will brief you on your duties. The responsibility both thrills and terrifies you. A full wall section under your command despite your relative inexperience." As if reading your thoughts, Geoffrey adds, "You've seen most of Dunwell's defences now, not just how they work, but why they were built. That understanding is rarer than you might think. Many guards simply follow orders without comprehending the larger strategy." You bow, accepting both the compliment and the responsibility. "Thank you, my lord. I won't disappoint you." The eastern wall offers an excellent view of the surrounding countryside. Unlike the southern approach where Lord Blackwell's main force remains encamped, this side faces dense forest broken by small meadows. Your section of wall stretches from the northeast tower to the central eastern tower, with 12 men under your command for the day's watch. Captain Rowan briefs you quickly on your duties. Regular patrols along the wall walk, sentries positioned at observation points, signals to watch for from scouts hidden in the forest. "Keep them alert but not anxious," Rowan advises. "Wall duty can be monotonous when there's no direct threat, but that's when mistakes happen." You organise the watch into rotating patterns, ensuring no man stays at one post long enough to grow complacent. The morning passes quietly, with only routine reports, local farmers seeking refuge, wildlife movements in the forest edge, a distant column of smoke that proves to be charcoal burners rather than enemy activity. Midday brings a welcome break as food is brought up to the wall. Bread, cheese, and thin ale. You eat with your men, listening to their conversations, learning about their lives before the siege. Been with Lord Geoffrey's household for 6 years, says Brennan, a stocky guard with a perpetually sunburned face. Best lord I've served. Treats his men fair. My family's farmed his northern fields for 3 generations, adds Watt, a younger guard recruited from the villages. When Blackwell's raids started hitting our borders last spring, Lord Geoffrey brought us all inside the castle walls, fed us from his stores while our crops were burning. Others share similar stories of Geoffrey's fairness, his preparation for this siege, his concern for those under his protection. Not every lord thinks beyond his own comfort, Brennan tells you. Some would leave us outside to fend for ourselves, protect only their immediate household and wealth. You begin to understand another aspect of castle defence, the loyalty of those within the walls. Not built through fear or mere obligation, but through reciprocal protection and care. The castle shelters the people, but the people also defend the castle. The afternoon brings excitement as one of the forest scouts returns, climbing quickly up a rope ladder lowered from the wall. He carries news of a supply train approaching Lord Blackwell's camp, wagons of food and materials sent from his home territory. You send a runner to inform Lord Geoffrey of this development. Within the hour, he arrives at the eastern wall along with Captain Rowan and Willem. "How many wagons?" Geoffrey asks the scout. 12, my lord, lightly guarded. Perhaps 20 men. They follow the river road and will pass through Oakford Clearing approximately 2 hours before dusk. Geoffrey studies the crude map the scout has drawn. Vulnerable at this point, he taps the clearing. Surrounded by forest on 3 sides. Limited visibility. Perfect for an ambush, Rowan agrees. Prepare 30 men, Geoffrey orders. Light armour, bows, and short swords. We leave through the eastern postern in 1 hour. As they turn to go, Geoffrey catches your eye. "Edgar, you'll come too. Leave Sergeant Mills in charge of the wall." Your heart races at this new responsibility, not just defending the castle, but actively striking at the enemy's resources. The raiding party assembles quickly, experienced guards mixed with village hunters who know the forest paths. Everyone wears dark green and brown clothing, faces smudged with dirt to reduce visibility among the trees. Weapons are wrapped in cloth to prevent metal from catching sunlight. Lord Geoffrey himself leads the expedition, armoured only in a light leather jerkin rather than his usual plate. "Speed and silence matter more than protection today," he explains when he catches your questioning glance. The eastern postern, hidden behind a false rock face just as Willem described, opens silently on well-oiled hinges. Your group slips out in pairs, immediately taking cover in the tree line beyond the castle's cleared perimeter. The forest embraces you with dappled shadows and the rich scent of decaying leaves. You move silently, following the lead hunters who navigate without hesitation through seemingly identical stretches of woodland. After nearly an hour of steady progress, Geoffrey signals a halt. "Oakford Clearing lies just beyond that rise," he whispers, gathering the leaders. "We'll position archers on 3 sides, here, here, and here." He draws in the dirt with a stick. "Swordsmen will block the road at this narrow point once the wagons have fully entered the clearing." The plan is elegant in its simplicity. The supply train, thinking itself still far from danger, will enter the clearing where visibility is good but escape routes are limited. Your forces, hidden among the trees, will cut off retreat, eliminate the escort, and capture the supplies. Remember, Geoffrey emphasizes to everyone, the wagons themselves are the primary target. Subdue the guards if possible rather than killing them. Each prisoner returned to Blackwell's camp spreads the story of our reach beyond the walls. You're assigned to a group of archers on the northern side of the clearing. Your position behind a fallen log draped with underbrush gives you a perfect view of the approaching road while keeping you hidden from sight. The wait stretches nearly an hour. Birds call overhead, insects buzz lazily in the afternoon warmth, then finally the distant creak of wagon wheels and the plodding hoofbeats of draft horses. "Weapons ready," whispers the archer captain beside you. "Wait for Lord Geoffrey's signal." The first wagon rolls into view, a heavy four-wheeled cart laden with barrels and sacks drawn by two sturdy horses. A driver sits at the front, looking bored. Two guards walk alongside, spears resting casually on their shoulders. More wagons follow, forming a line that stretches the length of the clearing. You wait, barely breathing, as the entire convoy enters the open space. The last wagon clears the southern tree line. A hawk's cry pierces the air. Geoffrey's signal. Archers rise from hiding positions around the clearing, arrows nocked and drawn. The wagon guards freeze in confusion, suddenly finding themselves surrounded. "In the name of Lord Geoffrey of Dunwell," Captain Rowan's voice rings out from the far side. "Lay down your weapons?" For a moment it seems the escort might resist. Then reality sets in. They're outnumbered, surrounded, with no defensive position. The guard captain throws down his sword in disgust, his men following suit. The entire operation takes less than 10 minutes. Guards are bound with rope, drivers instructed to remain with their wagons. Lord Geoffrey emerges from the trees, inspecting the captured supplies. "Grain, salt meat, arrows, replacement bowstrings," he notes with satisfaction. "Even wine for Lord Blackwell's table. How thoughtful of him to send us these gifts." The men laugh, already dividing the supplies for transport back to the castle. Smaller valuable items are distributed into packs for carrying. Larger supplies are left on the wagons, which will now be driven to Dunwell instead of Blackwell's camp. "What about the guards?" you ask, indicating the sullen prisoners. Geoffrey considers them briefly. "Take their weapons and boots. Release them." "Release them?" someone questions. They're no threat without weapons, and a long barefoot walk back to Blackwell's camp will give them time to consider their situation. Geoffrey addresses the captured guards directly. "Tell your lord what happened here. Tell him Castle Dunwell's reach extends far beyond its walls." The journey back feels triumphant despite the need for continued silence. The wagons are sent on a longer route that avoids Blackwell's patrols, while your group returns directly through the forest with the most valuable supplies. By nightfall, you're back inside Dunwell's walls, exhausted but exhilarated by the day's success. The captured supplies are inventoried in the Great Hall, enough food to extend the castle's provisions by nearly 2 weeks, plus valuable military supplies denied to the enemy. Lord Geoffrey addresses the raiding party, his satisfaction evident. Today's action strikes at Blackwell's greatest weakness, his extended supply lines. His army is too large to live off the land indefinitely, especially with winter approaching. Every wagon we capture brings us close to victory. He raises a cup of captured wine in toast. To Dunwell's defenders, not just those who stand upon the walls, but those who strike beyond them. The celebration is subdued but genuine, a much-needed boost to morale after weeks of siege. The castle's residents gather to see the captured supplies, marveling at the success of the raid. Children stare wide-eyed at the wagons now safely inside the courtyard, while village elders nod approvingly at the strategic victory. Later, as the excitement settles, you find yourself at the eastern wall once more, gazing toward the enemy camp, visible as distant fires in the darkness. Captain Rowan joins you, his expression thoughtful. "You're wondering when it will end," he observes. You nod. "Lord Blackwell has lost men, supplies, and time, yet he remains." "Pride," Rowan says simply. "The same pride that drives men to build castles drives others to try taking them." He leans against the stone merlon. "But there's a difference. The castle was built by men who understood patience. Siege warfare often came down to who could last the longest." Castles turned time itself into a weapon against attackers. You think about this, recalling Willem's lessons. Sieges bankrupted attackers. A typical army in the 1300s cost about 500 gold pieces daily. After weeks of going nowhere, many lords simply ran out of money. "Exactly," Rowan nods approvingly. "The siege of Kenilworth Castle lasted 6 months before attackers gave up, and that's not counting the weather." He gestures to the darkening sky where clouds promise more rain. Winter sieges were brutal for armies camping outside. More soldiers died from cold, disease, and hunger than from fighting. "Meanwhile, we sleep in actual beds," you observe. "Not comfortable by peacetime standards, but compared to soldiers sleeping in mud." "We might as well be at a 5-star resort," Rowan laughs softly. "That's the advantage castle defense always had. Time and comfort favor those inside the walls." He claps your shoulder before leaving. "Get some rest. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, but we're winning this siege one day at a time." You remain at the wall a while longer, watching the enemy fires burn low in the distance. Each one represents men growing colder, hungrier, and more discouraged with every passing day. Men questioning why they're sitting in mud while their families and farms need them. Men wondering if Dunwell is really worth the price they're paying. The most effective defense, you realize, is often patience, letting the enemy defeat himself through attrition, despair, and dwindling resources. About 60% of castle sieges ended with attackers simply giving up. As you finally turn away from the view, heading to your quarters for well-earned rest, you understand that Stonecastle Dunwell isn't just winning through its physical defences. It's winning by simply continuing to exist day after day while the enemy's will to fight slowly crumbles. Like the stone itself, patient, enduring, outlasting those who would seek to break it. 3 weeks pass like a slow-moving river. The rhythm of siege life becomes your new normal. Each day brings its patterns: wall duty, meal times, training, sleep. The calendar in the Great Hall marks off days with charcoal strokes, measuring the time since Lord Blackwell first appeared on the horizon. Autumn deepens. Leaves turn gold and crimson in the forest beyond the walls. Morning frost glitters on the moat. Your breath fogs in the pre-dawn air as you climb to your watch position on the eastern wall. Lord Blackwell remains, his camp a sprawling scar on the landscape, but it's changing, growing smaller. Each day a few more tents disappear. Men slip away in the night, deserting rather than face another cold week in the mud. The attacks have stopped. No more battering rams, no siege towers, no mangonels hurling disease. Just a grim waiting game that Blackwell is slowly, inevitably losing. He knows he's beaten, Willem tells you one morning as you both observe the enemy camp, just too proud to admit it yet. How much longer, you ask, watching thin smoke rise from their cooking fires. Willem considers this. A week, perhaps 2. The first heavy snow will decide it. You've changed during these weeks, not just in experience, but in how the other defenders see you. Lord Geoffrey has given you increasing responsibility, training new guards, organising provisions, leading small raids beyond the walls to harass enemy patrols. You're no longer just a young guard, but a respected member of Dunwell's defensive brain. Edgar. You turn to find Archer Ellie approaching, her bow slung across her back. Captain Rowan wants you at the North Tower. Something's happening in Blackwell's camp. You hurry across the wall walk, ducking through the tower door to find Rowan, Lord Geoffrey, and several captains gathered around a table. A messenger, mud-splattered and exhausted, stands before them. "Repeat what you told me," Geoffrey instructs the man. "Lord Haverton has crossed the northern border with 300 men, my lord," the messenger reports. "He's burning Blackwell's outlying manors and threatening his home castle. Blackwell's steward has sent 4 urgent messages in the past week begging for his return." Geoffrey's eyes gleam. So, that's why his camp shrinks daily. He's been quietly sending men home to defend his own lands. How did Haverton know to attack now, you ask, then immediately regret speaking out of turn in such esteemed company? But Geoffrey merely smiles. "Because I sent him a detailed account of Blackwell's situation here, along with a generous offer of alliance. The messenger we sent through for a key through the secret tunnel 3 weeks ago," Rowan adds for your benefit. "The one that emerges in the abandoned woodsman's hut 2 miles beyond the forest edge." You marvel at the strategic depth. Even as Dunwell defended itself directly, Geoffrey had set in motion events far beyond the castle walls, political manoeuvres to complement the physical defence. "What now, my lord?" Captain Rowan asks. "Now we increase the pressure." Geoffrey turns to the window. Winter approaches. Blackwell's men are cold, hungry, and learning that their homes are under threat. Tonight we remind them what comfort feels like. The plan unfolds with precision. As dusk falls, every fireplace and brazier in Castle Dunwell blazes with light. The great hall hosts a feast visible through its windows. Modest fare made to look plentiful through clever arrangement. Musicians play loud enough to be heard beyond the walls. Defenders patrol ostentatiously, calling cheerful greetings to each other in voices that carry to enemy ears. You stand on the south wall, watching the effect on Blackwell's camp. Men gather, pointing at the castle. Even at this distance, their envy is palpable. Psychological warfare was a key strategy, Willem says, joining you at the wall. Defenders would feast on battlements, making sure the smell of roasting meat drifted toward hungry besiegers. Medieval trash talk didn't need words, just a chicken leg waved tauntingly from a tower window. You smile at the image. Seems almost cruel. War is cruel, Willem shrugs, but this form kills fewer men than arrows and swords. As night deepens, the contrast becomes even more stark. Dunwell glows like a beacon, warm, safe, well supplied. The enemy camp appears as scattered, pathetic fireflies in the darkness. Dawn reveals the impact of the night's psychological campaign. At least 50 more tents have vanished. The remaining camp seems lethargic, its morning activities subdued and listless. Shortly before midday, movement catches your eye. A small group on horseback approaches the castle under a white flag of truce. At their head rides a figure in ornate armour, Lord Blackwell himself. Word spreads quickly. Lord Geoffrey orders the outer gates opened but keeps the portcullises down. He descends to meet Blackwell in the killing corridor of the gatehouse, a symbolic choice that isn't lost on anyone. Blackwell must state his business in the very space designed to slaughter those who approach uninvited. You stand on the wall walk above, watching through an arrow loop as the enemy lord enters the gatehouse alone, his escort waiting at a distance. Though you can't hear the conversation, the body language tells the story. Blackwell speaks with stiff formality. Geoffrey listens, impassive. No warmth passes between them. The meeting lasts barely 10 minutes. Blackwell emerges, mounts his horse without looking back and returns to his camp. Geoffrey climbs to the wall where you and the other senior defenders wait anxiously. He proposes a truce, Geoffrey announces. His forces will withdraw completely by tomorrow noon. In exchange, we allow them to leave unmolested and return any prisoners we've taken. You agreed? Rowan asks. Of course, Geoffrey's mouth quirks in a half-smile. We gain everything we wanted without further bloodshed. I even agreed to provide bread for their journey home, a gesture of goodwill that will remind every one of his men who holds the power here. Captain Rowan laughs. Generous in victory. Practical, Geoffrey corrects. Blackwell leaves with his pride wounded but his body intact. He's less likely to attempt revenge in the future. The day passes in watchful anticipation. In the enemy camp, men pack wagons, strike tents, and prepare for departure. You supervise the preparation of bread loaves to be sent to the departing army. Plain fare, but a pointed reminder that Dunwell's stores remain plentiful, while they've been reduced to accepting charity. By evening, the camp is half its previous size. Many of Blackwell's forces have already departed, leaving only his core troops to withdraw in organised fashion the next day. Will they honour the agreement? You ask Willem, as you both observe the activity from the wall. They have little choice, Willem replies. Winter is coming, their supplies are dwindling, and now their homeland is under threat. He gestures to the camp. Besides, we've broken their spirit. Look at them. No songs around the campfires tonight, no boasting or laughter, just men eager to sleep in real beds again. You think about the contrast, those soldiers huddled in the cold while you return to the relative comfort of the castle. Castle residents weren't staying at a 5-star resort, you observe, but compared to attackers sleeping in mud, they might as well have been. Willem nods approvingly at your understanding. Morning dawns clear and cold. Frost covers the ground like a dusting of sugar. Blackwell's remaining forces form up on the road heading south, a disciplined column ready to march, so different from the confident army that arrived 7 weeks ago. Lord Blackwell himself rides at their head, his banner hanging limp in the still air. He looks up at Castle Dunwell one last time, impenetrable, undefeated, exactly as it stood when he arrived. For a moment, something like grudging respect shows on his face. Then he turns away, signalling the withdrawal to begin. Cheers erupt along Dunwell's walls as the enemy army departs. People emerge from the castle gates to watch them go, maintaining a respectful distance but making no effort to hide their joy. Children dance and sing victory songs. Village elders nod with sage satisfaction. Lord Geoffrey stands on the gatehouse roof, watching until Blackwell's column disappears around a distant bend. Only then does he allow himself a smile. And that, he announces to the assembled defenders, is why castles were built. The celebration begins almost immediately. Tables appear in the courtyard, laden with food and drink. Musicians play joyful dancing tunes. The strict rationing of the past weeks is temporarily forgotten as Geoffrey orders the kitchens to prepare a proper feast. "We earned this," he tells everyone. "Dunwell has stood against siege for centuries, but never with defenders more worthy than you." The mood is infectious. Guards who maintained stoic vigilance for weeks now laugh and dance. Villagers who sought refuge embrace each other with tears of relief. Children who played quiet games in corners now race through the courtyard, shrieking with delight. You find yourself swept up in the celebration, accepting congratulations and slaps on the back from guards who once barely acknowledged you. Even Captain Rowan unbends enough to raise a cup in your direction. "Well done, lad," he calls over the noise. "You've earned your place among Dunwell's defenders." As evening approaches, the festivities continue, but you feel a need for quieter reflection. You climb to the eastern tower, finding solitude on its roof, as the setting sun paints the landscape in gold and crimson. Footsteps on the stairs announce someone's approach. Lord Geoffrey emerges onto the roof carrying 2 cups of wine. He offers one to you. "Not joining the celebration?" he asks, leaning against the battlement beside you. "Just taking it all in, my lord." You gesture toward the distant horizon where the last of Blackwell's forces have long since vanished. "7 weeks ago, I thought we might all die here." "But we didn't," Geoffrey says simply, "because Dunwell was built by men who understood how to survive. 300 years of defensive wisdom encoded in stone." You sip the wine, better quality than you've ever tasted, and consider the journey of the past weeks. "I've learned more than I thought possible," you admit, "about castles, about defense, about leadership." "You've shown aptitude for all 3, Geoffrey observes. "Which is why I've made a decision." He turns to face you fully. "My captain of guards is retiring next spring. I want you to train as his replacement." The offer leaves you momentarily speechless. Captain of guards, a position normally given to men twice your age with decades of experience. "My lord, I'm honoured, but surely there are others more qualified, more experienced perhaps," Geoffrey acknowledges. "But experience alone isn't what Dunwell needs. It needs understanding of why the castle works as it does, of how its defences function as a complete system. You've shown that understanding." He gestures to the castle spread below you. "Dunwell will face threats again. Different enemies, different weapons perhaps, but the principles remain the same. I need someone who grasps those principles to lead its defence." The responsibility feels enormous, but also right somehow. These walls have become more than stone to you. They're a living system that you're now part of. "I would be honoured, my lord," you say finally. Geoffrey nods, satisfied. "Good. Your training begins after the Harvest Festival. Willem will continue your education in the castle's secrets, and Captain Rowan will teach you the practical aspects of command. As darkness falls, you both watch the stars appear in the clear autumn sky. The sounds of celebration drift up from the courtyard below. Music, laughter, life continuing. Success in medieval warfare often came down to who could last the longest, Geoffrey observes quietly. Castles turned time itself into a weapon against attackers, and Dunwell has lasted centuries, you add, running your hand along the cool stone of the battlement. "With defenders like you," Geoffrey says, "it will last centuries more." The next days bring a gradual return to normal life. Village families prepare to return to their homes. Farmers assess their fields and plan for late harvests where possible. Craftspeople resume work, interrupted by the siege. The castle itself requires attention. Mason Aldred and his crew inspect every inch of wall for damage. Supplies depleted during the siege must be replenished before winter. The moat needs clearing of debris left by enemy attacks. You throw yourself into these tasks, aware that your new responsibilities begin soon. Each day brings new lessons as you shadow Captain Rowan, learning how he organizes the guard rotations, handles disputes, and maintains discipline while keeping morale high. Leadership isn't about giving orders, Rowan tells you as you walk the walls together. It's about making everyone understand why those orders matter. Willem continues your education in the castle's deeper secrets. He shows you hidden mechanisms you never knew existed, ways to block passages if sections of the castle are breached, signals that can be sent between towers without enemy knowledge, even small hidden chambers where vital documents or treasures can be concealed during attacks. The original emergency exits didn't have those annoying alarms, he jokes as you explore a particularly clever hidden door, but they did occasionally have snakes. 2 weeks after Blackwell's departure, you make a discovery of your own. While reviewing old maps in the library, you notice a discrepancy between 2 different drawings of the Western Tower. One shows a chamber that doesn't appear on the other. You bring this to Willem's attention. He studies both maps carefully, then looks at you with new respect. You've found something even I didn't know about, he admits. A chamber that may have been sealed up during renovations a century ago. Together, you investigate the Western Tower, tapping walls and measuring dimensions until you locate a section that sounds hollow behind the stones. Willem's experienced fingers find the hidden mechanism, different from the others you've learned, older and more subtle. A section of wall swings inward, revealing a small chamber untouched for generations. Dust covers everything, but the contents remain intact. Chests of documents, weapons of ancient design, and something that makes Willem draw in a sharp breath. A detailed model of Castle Dunwell as it first appeared, showing features lost to time. A treasure trove of defensive knowledge, Willem whispers, lifting a scroll with reverent hands. Techniques and designs we thought lost. Lord Geoffrey is equally impressed when shown your discovery. These documents will help us strengthen Dunwell even further, he declares. Edgar, you've already proved your worth as future captain. Life settles into peaceful patterns as winter approaches. The first snow falls, dusting Dunwell's towers with weight. From the walls, you watch wood smoke rise from village chimneys. Families safe in their homes because the castle stood firm. On a crisp December morning, you stand on the south wall where you first spotted Lord Blackwell's army months ago. The landscape lies quiet under a thin blanket of snow, peaceful and serene. It's hard to imagine the fields filled with enemy soldiers, the air thick with arrows, the ground churned to mud by siege engines. Yet the memory remains clear, not just of fear and danger, but of discovery, of learning that stone walls are more than barriers. They're carefully designed systems, the accumulated wisdom of generations encoded in architecture. Captain Rowan joins you at the wall. "Thinking deep thoughts?" he asks, stamping his feet against the cold. "About castles," you admit. "About why they work." Rowan nods, understanding. Not just big homes, were they? Battle-ready machines built to beat the odds. Their power wasn't just in how strong they were, you continue. It was in how smart they were. Together, you look out over the peaceful winter landscape, secure in the knowledge that Dunwell stands ready, as it has for centuries, to shelter and protect when danger returns. Because that's what castles do. They endure, they outlast, they stand patient guard over generations of lives lived within their walls. And now you're part of that legacy, not just a defender hiding behind stone, but a keeper of knowledge, ensuring that when the next Lord Blackwell appears on the horizon, Dunwell will stand ready. Stone upon stone, wisdom upon wisdom, the castle has taught you its secrets. And like the stone itself, those lessons will endure. As you lie in your warm bed tonight, so different from Edgar's modest pallet in Castle Dunwell, remember that the castles that dot our landscapes aren't just romantic ruins or tourist attractions. They were sophisticated defensive machines carefully designed by generations of builders who understood that survival often came down to location, preparation, and the wisdom encoded in stone. Sleep well, knowing that those medieval minds created systems so effective that many of their fortresses still stand today, silent sentinels that outlasted the threats they were built to withstand. Let the patient strength of Castle Stone carry you into peaceful dreams.